This is the Original Copy Podcast, Season 2. If this is your first time here, go ahead and give us a like and hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for future episodes. What's going on?
Not much. Obviously, last episode we said we were going to talk a lot about the JFK stuff. If you all are not aware, the JFK files, most of the remaining files got released on the 15th, I believe. Let me double check that, but I believe it was the 15th of March, 18th of March, 2025. So
There
it
you
was
go.
basically almost a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. But we're going to go through kind of our thoughts on it. There's obviously well over 20,000 documents, pages, just in general of everything about the JFK stuff. So we're not robots. We weren't able to go through it all, but we have some takeaways, stuff we want to talk about. So that's what a lot of this episode is going to be about. But I mean, first and foremost, what do you think happened on that day? I'm pretty sure it was in November when it happened.
Oh,
But
I wouldn't know the date.
it was in like 1963 or 1964 or something. But what do you think happened?
Honestly, I mean, I wasn't there like you were saying. I have zero idea of what actually happened, but to my best knowledge, I mean, inside job, in and out, in some way, shape, or form. I pretty much always thought that, I guess, growing up after, learning about like 9/11 or things like that. JFK has just always seemed like an obvious, inside assassination. I never really believed the Lee Harvey Oswald situation. That always seemed like a plant. And the more you look into it, it's just weird. And the stories from that day, like everybody that worked with him, they all have like weird, just different, inconsistent stories. There's a lot of like lies in there, people making stuff up like they saw something they didn't. But I never knew why they did it. Like I never really understood the context until I got a little bit older. And like my opinion is he realized certain parts of the government were just getting free reign to do things, and like they couldn't be sanctioned in any way. They basically, and certain entities in the government had surpassed the government as a whole in like ability to do things without restrictions, and they were just going unchecked. And so he was trying to basically air that out, expose that to the people, and they saw that coming a mile away. He should have saw it coming a mile away. I don't know how he didn't, but there must have been more to the story of why he was so like brash and vocalizing. Like if you listen to his speeches, he pretty much is saying like, they've wronged you. You don't know what they're,
Oh yeah, 100%.
like, so yeah, putting that out in a time like that, I think painting a huge target on his back, but he must have felt like he had some sort of security. And that's really the biggest question to me. Like, I don't care who really killed him. Like, because we know what type of people wanted him. It doesn't matter the person that did it. It doesn't matter how it happened, honestly. It's really just the motives. So I have no idea. I don't think Harvey did it. And I always sort of believed that, especially after hearing William Cooper talk about it, but the driver had shot him or something else, So that's all I know.
Yeah, I mean,
I think.
I'm also under the impression that it was an inside job. I mean, I definitely think Lee Harvey Oswald was the patsy, was the fall guy. I do think that he took a shot, but I believe that, a lot of people say MK Ultra, he was brainwashed, he was given something to act without his knowing. There's, what do you call it? Whenever he went and testified, or I guess went on the stand, he said he wanted to take a polygraph, wanted to prove that he was telling the truth. And it almost seems like, did he not trust himself, or did he think that his mind had been manipulated? And that's just based on me reading like the excerpts that came from the National Archives. Like it says that he was like adamant that he wanted to take that test. But the other thing that I'm confused of, unless I'm thinking of somebody totally different who took a polygraph test, but I'm pretty sure, based on what I read, that he died 18 hours after he was arrested.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
And that's why I'm like, why would he have taken a polygraph if he had, unless they did it super fast? Hold on. Is this? No, that's who took the polygraph.
Who?
I apologize. So the guy who shot him. So the guy, Mr. Ruby. So
Oh,
Mr. Ruby was a Dallas club owner. I believe it was kind of like just like a nightclub or a party club or something like that. But 18 hours after Lee Harvey Oswald shot JFK, Oswald was shot and killed in the bottom of the Dallas police station by Mr. Ruby, who was not a police officer. So it's like, for me, the amount of coincidences you have to be like, hey, like you could believe all you want. Lee Harvey Oswald was the only shooter, that he took the shot. What a great shot, whatever. Like you could believe all that. But then he just dies. Because the only way he just dies is if the vice president says, go kill that guy right now. In the sense of like, he's mad that his friend got shot, so go kill him or whatever. But all that screams to me is, hey, if Lee Harvey, like, it's like tying off loose ends. It's like the movie Shooter, where they take the shot and then they go to kill him, to tie off that loose end, and he gets away, right? So for me, it was like Mr. Ruby. It makes you wonder if Mr. Ruby had like an MK Ultra mind control thing that he was told to like go kill him after people realized Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't.
Even if that was the case, it would have to be a little bit more in depth because like people at the police department had to be in on it to some degree.
Yeah, and so that's what I started thinking about. That is like the way the government's run. I've been paying attention the past years, at least since COVID. There's a lot of incompetent people, and I think if a giant organization knew that they were out for somebody like JFK, a secret would get out. I feel like somebody would spill the beans. So I feel like it's such a small cohort of people, like down to like me counting the number on my hands.
Yeah.
And then you have just one dirty cop that you've paid off to let that guy in. And then you brainwash or, sleeper cell Mr. Ruby into doing something like that. I think that's what we're dealing with. And obviously that's super hard to prove. And that's why a lot of people are like, who cares? That was 50 years ago. Like, why are we still talking about it? It's because the amount of details you'd have to dig into that is why the CIA is the CIA. Like, you're not going to be able to prove fully inside job, or if Mossad had anything to do with
like
it, or Russia.
That alone, like pulling that off as an entire heist operation type, situation to just do that. But let alone it's this dude that like killed the president.
Yeah.
The coincidences of that. You can't explain it.
And for me, it's like he wasn't the first president. It's not like the Secret Service didn't exist or security details didn't exist. It's like people always had security details. And the fact that like someone was able to get a shot off, kind of like what we saw with Trump.
Yeah.
The fact that in today's day and age, somebody had the same opportunity Lee Harvey Oswald did. And it's like, but he hit his shot. And for me, that's why I'm like, I don't buy it, because you're saying that the amount of tech we have here, somebody had the opportunity to shoot a running for president person. Like, that is ridiculous. So that's why I'm like, there's no way it was just, he was
just throwing this out there. What if, because these recent Trump assassination attempts, especially the first one, but what if they staged those on purpose just to make it seem like there are still assassins out here? This is still a thing that happens, and legitimize the Lee Harvey, the JFK assassination, essentially, like that was the real thing, because there's so much on the line. There might be something very valuable buried in these files or redacted from it now that they just can't let get out there. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's also something interesting too is the people who are covering Trump's, like not to sidetrack, but like Trump when he was like the attempted assassination, you had like CNN was there. Like all these people who normally don't cover Trump rallies. Yeah. Like Fox, obviously, or Newsmax or Newsweek or whatever it's called. Like, yeah, you would assume those people would be there, but like CNN doesn't normally go to the middle of Pennsylvania to cover it. But the amount of stations that were there, covering that, it to me is like, okay, why this one? Like, why were you guys all at this one? Or like,
I'm almost convinced like somehow there's a way of like brainwashing people to keep a secret. Like they don't even know. Like,
but what if it's
you
like
know?
the UFO thing where it's like you only tell one person the side of the plot, so they don't know, and then you're just in position.
No, but the thing is like, basically there's a bunch of stuff that like, hey, we're manipulating you to either tell these messages or whatever it is, you know, or we're communicating, hey, go to this thing and we're gonna let you know that's an important thing to go to. Somehow people are, you know, receiving communications from people and then relaying some of the messages to us on whoever's paying them's behalf. And like you can only do that if you're ignoring the fact that you're doing it, but you can't. Then people would tell that secret. So it's not just them ignoring it. You're either brainwashing them so they don't realize they're doing it, or you're telling them the perfect lie that makes sense to why they're doing something else. Actually, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But I mean, going back to JFK, like I definitely think that it was an inside job, kind of like what you were referring to. And we can see the same thing with Trump, that JFK realized that there was a problem with the government, that there was so much overreach that it formed it in itself its own entity. Like there was the United States government and then there was something else. And I feel like we're going to get into it, but the same thing with the UFOs. Like he was trying to do a bunch of stuff, you know, in 10 days before he wanted all the UFO things released. So like he wanted it released, 10 days later, he's assassinated. Like there's a bunch of things that probably culminated. I'm not sure if it was just one thing. It wasn't like he just looked at somebody funny and they're like, go kill him. I think there was a bunch of things that they were like, okay, he's got to stop because he's going to ruin this entity that we've created. And I think it had to have been higher up officials in the CIA. I mean, even as far as like a vice president, like the way you make those decisions, it's not just some low person in the CIA, because then you get routed out, especially if not everyone's involved in like planning the assassination.
Mm-hmm.
Some higher up is going to be like, oh, well, they're going to find the bread trail, right, towards that person. So it has to be somebody in high ranking status because they're able to cover and hide stuff and they have that power to like blackmail or extort.
But things are so compartmentalized that like the people involved might not even know exactly what they're contributing to either.
Yeah, 100%. Like we saw with Trump's assassination, they told the Secret Service detail, like, hey, don't go on that roof.
Right.
And so it's like, obviously the Secret Service wasn't in on it, or at least we think so, but like they weren't in on it, but they were told that. So it's like someone made that call to them, which means somebody above that person told them that, which means somebody in that law enforcement, the local law enforcement knew. Because if you're like, if you know the basically front runner for the president is going to be speaking here and you're in Pennsylvania in a red county, like, you know, like let's say you're the sheriff, you're going to tell your people you're going to go up there. Like you're working hand in hand with the Secret Service, but you're going to see an empty roof and be like, we need to be on that.
Yeah.
So it's like somebody had to have told them. And obviously we heard the excuse. It was too sloped, some BS like that. But like there had to have been someone made that decision because the kid was allowed to climb up there, take out a rifle. And the other thing is too, he had to have the rifle in his backpack. So that means he had the time to fully assemble a gun, get scopes in and range find like his yardages. And the Secret Service, obviously, they have the whole rules of engagement, which is BS because it's
It wasn't that far, was it? I thought it was like 150 yards.
No, it was. But
Yeah.
I'm saying like he still took out a rangefinder. He had.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, so he had all the time in the world to set up this shot.
Yeah.
And then apparently the Secret Service snipers across had all the time to shoot. The whole point I'm trying to say is there's too many coincidences there's a lot of camera crews there, right? So it's like, did they think something was going to happen? There was a guy who got led up onto a roof. Secret Service got told not to go up on that roof. You had people people shouting, hey, he's got a rifle. No one tried to go up and they tried to go up and de-escalate, but apparently the kid turned around and pointed his gun at them. At that point, I'm taking my gun out, ducking, and going back up and firing shots at him. Because you start firing shots, Trump's off the stage. If you're the cop, shooting at that guy, like throw a flashbang, throw something up there.
But like even despite all that, the snipers,
yeah,
like they saw him.
yeah. But the whole point that they were saying was rules of engagement means you
So
can't
dumb,
shoot.
though.
No, that's what I'm saying. So going back to the JFK thing, is we just described in that Trump situation all the coincidences. The same thing is going to happen in the JFK. He was in a car with no roof on it. He had two of his Secret Service agents driving, which he would have trusted most. So they would have pulled that car perfectly where it needed to be. His wife was, what's her last name?
Onassis.
Part of the big families, right? A lot of people think that she had something to do with it. She made a bunch of phone calls to, was it Lyndon B. Johnson? I think it was Lyndon B. Johnson.
I think so.
But that could have been like, hey, I did what I was supposed to do, or I was there. Like a lot of people think she could have had a part in it somehow or knew that it was going to happen. There's too many coincidences. And then you have the Lee Harvey Oswald taking the shot. He dies 18 hours after it happens in police custody. And the guy who kills him is like a club owner. Like, so for me, it's like if you line up both situations, one was a failed execution by the same group of people who live according to the rules of the successful first assassination. So for me, before we dive deep in, it's like that's why I believe that it's a conspiracy, that there's a higher entity. Because people, the whole conspiracy theory is what? Okay, it was a planned assassination. But for why? There has to, if there's a conspiracy theory, there has to be like a reason. Like if aliens are real, that's the conspiracy theory. Okay, why is that? Like, why does it become a theory? Like, why is that important? For this, it's like the conspiracy is there's a higher entity government that is wanting full control to take over the United States to the point of they can just knock off the sitting president of the United States.
Yeah.
So for me, now us getting into like actually going into details, that's why I think it was a conspiracy. Not only that it was almost like a show of power. Like if we can touch
it was for sure a display.
Yeah, because imagine that small group of CIA agents saying, if we can kill the sitting president of the United States, we can go into any country and overturn that country. Because if we're the best, everyone's below us. If we can do that, we can do whatever we want. Therefore, rule the world.
But they also, they killed or JFK Jr.
Yeah.
Or he died of a skiing accident.
Yeah, and then wasn't there one that
story?
Who got shot? Bobby Kennedy?
Oh yeah. I'm pretty sure.
And then another one died in it. Yeah, so it's like a plane crash or ski
but like
whatever.
JFK in and of itself, that's a very strong message. But then to double down and triple down, it's like it means a lot to just the American people to see the president get taken out. Like obviously somebody's capable of that. That's scary, but the message of like the families too. Like I think it probably was one of the families, if not the Onassis, having some involvement.
Yeah. And I mean, getting into it too, Lee Harvey Oswald defected. He was a Marine and defected to the Soviet Union after he finished his his service. And it's like, that's when the Soviet Union and the communist thing was taking place.
Right.
What, not a better opportunity to say, oh, look, the communist assassinated the president. So therefore, the whole Bay of Pigs thing, nuclear, Armageddon, all this stuff starts to escalate, and it's a way to help manufacture. So it's like the entity that we're talking about is so desireful of power and industry and money that it's like whatever we need to do to escalate that, we'll do it.
You know what the other crazy thing is? He was at man, I keep forgetting the countries, but I want to say there was some country in South America and then some European country that he was at both these embassies 2 months before the assassination.
Let's pull it up.
Yeah, so Oswald was meeting with who knows at embassies and stuff, and that's just not something that your average person does. And the CIA actually, in the JFK files, it says that they had interest in Oswald up to 2 years prior to the assassination, and they had been, observing him and looking into his behavior and all sorts of different things. But to me, that looks like, okay, they had contact with him. He was a potential asset. They were figuring out how to utilize him, but realistically, they were probably searching for somebody to be the perfect person for whatever lie they wanted it to be, like you were saying, pinning it on the Russians or the Soviets, you know? And
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's see. I'm going to go to just his background real quick. So if you guys go on the National Archives, like all of this stuff that we're going to talk about is also on there.
If you want to read all like 50,000 pages, I think,
Yeah,
60,000.
it's going to take you a while, but and then also to try to understand all of it is a whole nother task in,
It's so
in and of
early.
itself. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, let's see if it's on the Warren Commission records. Bear with us, people. I apologize. I'm looking for this thing.
I think his wife was, I don't know if she was from the same like heritage as him, but I think she was foreign from another country as well.
She was. That is correct. She was. Oh, where did he meet her? I read it earlier. He met her. It was either as he was. Yeah, it was like he met her. I think she was a reporter or something, but in the Soviet Union. I think that's where he met her. But again, I could be totally wrong. All right, 1 second.
Also, if I was like, I don't know, you totally could think that you're working for the agency doing something good. And what if your mission was like, go up in this building and you're looking for this target? So you go up in that building with your sniper and you're looking for that target. That target never shows up, but you were up in that building and they frame you.
Oh, 100%.
You know?
Yeah.
Super easy.
I'm just going to Google it real quick.
Because, like, I don't think you'd be able to convince somebody, like, hey, you're going to take out the president. Like,
yeah.
You know?
Like, literally.
Not an easy sell.
All right, let's see here. He did travel to Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Where he visited the Cuban and Soviet consulates.
Oh, okay.
Before returning to the United States.
Yeah.
So,
suspicious.
Yeah, and it goes into like in the records, it talks about he met an elderly woman who was a communist, and back when like you just weren't publicly a communist at all, and like was the one who like wanted to persuade him. I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm still trying to research just in general, but like I'm not sure the full reason why he deferred to the Soviet Union, but it's weird how he travels. Like he literally leaves, goes to Europe, gets into Russia, says he's there, he wants to be there on a student visa, then declares to the student visa people that he wants to be a Soviet citizen or whatever, and then he gets married, and then he's coming back, and then all of this stuff just lines up. It's like you're in the military, the CIA has access to you if you're in the military. And
okay, hear me out. What if the whole so it gets deep. It gets
super
deep
fast,
real quick. But you know, the just Russian, you know, sleeper agents and all that type of stuff with the KGB. And what if they sort of were playing in? What if he was sort of a Soviet agent, but was intentionally playing into the CIA's plan because Soviet intelligence was so much better than the CIA. They knew what they were going to do way before they did it. And what if somehow Oswald was like, I don't know, supposed to save him, or, you know, who knows? There could be a crazy different angle to it.
Yeah, I mean, they also could have found the perfect patsy. I mean, again, I'm going to read this real quick because it's from the records, but it says 520 documents that are continuing. There are 520 documents that are going to continue to be withheld, and they are from sections 10 and 11 of the JFK Act. So section 10 and 11 of the JFK Act, section 10 is regarding Assassination Records Review Board, or ARRB, to petition courts to request the Attorney General to release assassinated related information held under seal of court or under the injunction of Secretary of a grand jury. The only instance where it believed that important assassinations remained under seal is basically due to electronic surveillance. And then Section 11, hold on. Okay. Section 11 is excluded from the JFK Act tax return information protected under Section 6103 of the Internal Revenue Code, as well as deeds governing access or transfer of or release of gifts and donations of records to the United States government. So there's that. So there's a lot of stuff that has not been released.
What was that about the IRS though?
So basically, if it's going to show somebody like where they got their money or tax return,
That's all just withheld.
Yeah, it's all just withheld.
Gotcha.
Which that's important.
Yeah.
Because if
follow the money.
If you follow the money, but that's the one thing that we can't see. I'm not saying that he would list his tax returns as like, I got $200 million from the Soviet Union, but like, if you can look in the tax returns, like it said it was held under seal of court, which is like, I don't know, that's a very interesting thing to me. Anyway, going back kind of to the beginning of the events, I kind of want to go over some stuff with Ruby, Mr. Ruby that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So it says on November 24th, 1963. So I'm pretty sure he was shot. JFK was shot on the 23rd. But it says on November 24th, 1963, less than 18 hours after his arrest, Oswald was fatally shot in the basement of the Dallas Police Department by Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner. This shooting took place in full view of a national television audience.
How?
So they were, I think, because I've seen the video before, I think they were walking him down the hallway, and I think he just ran out of nowhere and just like shot him. He was either outside or in a hallway or something like that, but then he just got shot. Which to me,
so when they say in police custody, they don't. What? But they said in the basement.
Yeah, because that's where the jail cell is held. Because you have
okay, I guess I could see where there's film crew in there. And
you have
stuff.
a police
It's
department upstairs, and then downstairs the jail cells. So to me, it's like, how did you get a gun in there? Was that normal? Because obviously they don't have like the scanners and stuff that we have now. Because 9/11 made sure everyone had like the electronic scanner to make sure you don't have a gun on you or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, that this is a high cause for investigation, so you would be super suspicious of like keeping this person alive, and like the fact that someone was.
You should be, but I feel like they just the security should be high for the president, not for the guy that kills the president.
No,
And
I know,
it
but
just
like
wasn't tight.
But like, look what's happening to the Luigi guy right now.
Uh-huh.
Whenever he gets moved around, he has a full like Kevlar vest on. He's like full. There's like, 40
so
people.
much of that's just a big show for us to like.
Sure, but like it makes you wonder why wasn't it a show this time?
Because
Like,
they didn't want to. They wanted to just wrap it up, keep it quiet.
Yeah, tie off that loose end.
But that guy, Jack Ruby going in there, like anybody could have did that. Pretty much anybody could have did that.
The fact that so this was obviously the guy would have probably been dead now, but like imagine if Lee Harvey Oswald didn't die and he was able just to full on tell. Like to me it's like there's a reason he freaking died. Like
even if he didn't die, he would have died.
Yeah, but like imagine if he didn't for some reason and he was in there, he could have been like, I'm gonna tell you all exactly what happened and like get freedom. Because he could have gone to the public. If he went to the public and said, this is what happened and laid out his story, this wouldn't be a conspiracy theory. We'd all know the answer. So
they just couldn't let it happen.
So the fact that like he dies 18 hours after, somebody was, because it goes back to the movie Shooter, right? The whole point was you distract him, they take the shot at the president. If you haven't seen the movie, go look at the movie. But takes the shot at the president. That cop was supposed to shoot him. End of story. So those 18 hours, they must have been freaking out because he probably was supposed to die.
Right.
Like Oswald was probably supposed to take the shot and then he was supposed to die.
Do you think he actually even shot?
So that's the other thing, right? It's like people look at the Trump assassination and say, did that kid actually shoot? Or was he just the patsy? But like, I think Oswald, in my opinion, I think
a real sniper made that Trump shot for sure.
Yeah.
Not that kid.
But I think that Oswald was the shooter. I think that there was probably 2 other shooters that were like on standby in case he missed.
But like snipers from elevated positions.
But I don't know what like the 60s snipers looked like. It's way different than it is now. But like, I would say probably 250 yards away at max, because your moving vehicle head's pretty small at that far away.
I mean, I'll be honest. I think the snipers then were just to the point where they're like could compete with modern day snipers if they don't have the most advanced technology. Like the scopes aren't anything on what we have nowadays, but like they had scopes that could reach out, and they were kind of old school. Like they just knew how to dial it in and really like know the wind and all that stuff. Like people do nowadays, but they really knew how to do it with that old simple equipment.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but I do think he was the one who took the shot for sure. And the reason I say that is, if he didn't take the shot, they wouldn't have killed him. Like he wouldn't have died 18 hours later. Like if they just found him, like if he was just a random guy that are like, oh, you shot the president, he would just be in prison forever. And then he would claim insanity because he'd be like, I didn't kill him. Right. Whatever. Right. And they'd be like, oh yeah, you did. But the fact that he did shoot means that either he was given training, he was given coordinates, he was given insight, he was given location, he was given all this stuff. Because like if you're going to kill somebody, the whole point is you're preventing all this information from getting out. And if he didn't have any information because he like wasn't the shooter, you wouldn't just kill him because he's not worth anything, dead or alive.
I think, look, man, I'm just making this up, but I think this is plausible. Is that just like the Cold War was this weird little tension thing? I feel like he was there on some sort of mission, and I don't think it was to kill the president.
Yeah.
And in fact, the most likely thing to me is that he was looking for the shooter. I think he knew it was going to happen. He was looking, scanning for the shooter, trying to find the shooter. I don't think he ever fired a shot. But here's the thing. The shooter was in the vehicle. He was never looking at the vehicle. He was looking everywhere else.
Okay.
So I don't know, but it's plausible.
Yeah, because I mean, there's that video that looks like the driver or the passenger of the driver.
Or
like,
even Jackie.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like the way, like, it looks like because when you look at the thing, he has a bullet wound going straight from his neck up.
Dude, it's like before anything happens, she just comes and cradles him like right there, puts her hand for sure there. And then it's like while she's holding him, it happens.
Yeah. So he could have, quote unquote, they could have said, hey, take a shot, and knew he was going to miss. Because what if they thought, like the guy that we saw shoot at Trump, like you get some guy who thinks he's good at shooting, but you know he's going to miss, right? So like you have him take the shot, but you have somebody else take a shot from another area, making it sole blame on the person actually shooting the gun. So they could have had Oswald
I feel like it just doesn't matter if he shoots or not. They can pin it all on him because it's like there was a shot from somewhere. The president died. Hey, look, there's a man in a building right here that was conveniently there with a sniper rifle. Yeah. Everybody says that's the dude. Nobody's going to question it. He doesn't have the pull to get lawyers or anything quick enough. They're just going to throw the book at him real quick or just take him in the basement and let somebody else finish it.
Yeah. Do you want to pull up the video real quick of Jackie like cradling him and stuff? Because I would love to do like a quick breakdown. But as Zane's looking for that, I'm kind of going to go back and kind of go over like Oswald. So on October 26th, 1956, which is an important date for me, but I will not say why, Lee Harvey Oswald reported for duty at the Marine Corps' recruit depot in San Diego, California. He was 68 inches tall and weighed 135. So he was not a big guy at all. He was trained in the use of the M1 rifle. His practice scores were not very good. See? He was not a good shooter when he first started, right? But obviously you don't need to be if you're going to be blamed. All right. On September, this is going a little bit further. On September 20th, before his departure, he wrote his mom, "Well, I have booked a passage on a ship to Europe. I would have had to sooner or later, and I think it's best to go now. Just remember, above all else, that my values are very different from Robert's or yours. It is difficult to tell you how I feel. Just remember this is what I must do. I did not tell you about my plans because you could hardly be expected to understand. I did not see Aunt Lillian while I was here. I will write again as soon as I land." So this is him going to Europe, but his plans to eventually go to the Soviet Union. Let's see. So he was met at the Moscow railroad station by a representative of Intourist, the state tourist agency. Basically, they went sightseeing and immediately told the person that he met from Intourist that he wanted to leave the United States and become a Soviet citizen. Apparently, it was referred to as his historic day. Let's see. So he also had a diary. So you might be like, how do you know all these things? He had a diary that apparently he was taking notes in.
Like super religiously, right?
Yeah. And so that's why they have a lot of this, obviously written down. But do you have that video?
Yeah, it pulled up.
All right. So it's going to be on our screen. We're going to try to do our best to get it on the actual screen so you can see, but we do have a TV in the background that we're going to play it from.
Yeah, so this is should be the whole thing.
So this is obviously super old video quality. It's not anything recent, but it's obviously from
there we go.
the 60s. As you can see, JFK is rolling up. JFK is on the right-hand side of the bus. His wife, Jackie Manassas, is on the left-hand side. She reaches over.
Yeah, he's right here. She's just reaching her hand over, sort of grabs him, and then see... Like her hand is sort of right under his head. We can't see what's going on here. But there would have been a perfect opportunity to do something. She's like reaching down too.
Yeah, and he's almost like leaning over. And I can't tell if there was a shot that originally hit or if something happened, but he goes down into this curled position, kind of into her. And then you can't see her hands. Mm-hmm. And it could be that she has like a Saturday Night Special type of gun. We don't really know. But like the way his head goes back, if you replay
it looked like it was from
down.
From his lap.
It doesn't look like if you got hit from the side, first of all, half your head would be gone if it's not a pistol round.
Dude, look at that. It's like from straight down.
Yeah. So if you look at his head goes up. His head doesn't go to the side or the other side.
You can see he gets shot in the forehead, but his head was looking down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from that angle, that's why a lot of people think that Jackie could have had something to do with it. But if you look at the autopsy photo, he has basically a bullet in his neck, which is like a freaking great shot. He's not even sitting sideways. Like he's literally, if you're taking a shot and I'm sitting facing the street and you're on my left, you're not going to shoot through my throat because I'm not facing that way. So the only way that shot happens is if you're behind me or in front of me. But the behind, there's no exit point. And if you guys know ballistics and shooting, the entrance point is going to be a little hole. The out point is going to be a giant cavity. So if you look at those photos, and we can try to pull one up too, but the photo is an entrance point on the front, which means that he was most likely shot from the front. So who's in the front? There's also other videos we can try to find, but his driver, and there was another person in the front who was another agent, basically.
Right.
They were in the front, and then his wife would have had direct access.
Yeah, we'll see if there's another angle of it.
Yeah, but while Zane's looking for those also, I'm just going to kind of go to my X account and look at the bookmarks I have for this. Where is that? 1 second. Let's see. And again, I apologize. There's going to be some pauses in here just because we want to make sure we're actually finding the correct information.
All right, I think this is a better angle. It's higher quality.
Remastered version.
Yeah.
So she leans into him and she grabs his arm, and it could be that he's trying to fix his tie. It could be anything, any human movement that he's making. It doesn't look like he's injured yet, or else he'd be on the floorboard if he was. And she leans over and she puts her head in front of his head. So if he got shot from the side, either the bullet would have went through her head first into his head, or it would have went through his head, maybe going through her head. Obviously, bullets tumble. Bullets don't have to go in a straight line. If it's FMJ, which is Full Metal Jacket, it could have penetrated straight through, but most likely it wasn't FMJ and it could have tumbled and deflected somewhere else. But if you look at the video itself, it definitely looks like she had, I mean, if you can look at the screen, but she was kind of like this on top of him, like kind of cradling him, where she easily could have got a gun and just went bang.
To me, it definitely looked like she reached over first with her left hand and put her left on her shoulder, so she's covering most of whatever's going 100%. On. From most views too, and then with her other hand is already like down pretty much like close to his crotch area.
Yeah,
and so whether maybe the car was outfitted with some special gun down there that she had,
100%.
I don't know what it was. That seems a little ridiculous because she wouldn't have had to do it, but. You know, something. It looks like she reached down and then he definitely got shot from underneath.
Yeah.
The interesting thing too is we can sort of see it here, right when it's about to happen. So keep an eye on the driver here up front. It's just about to happen, I think. So you can see that sort of quick, like
he like turned around,
but it wasn't like he turned around and then it happened. He turned around and then turned immediately back as it was happening, like if you just flicked on somebody.
Like almost like if he had a gun under his arm and slightly turned his head to make sure he was aimed. And this is a trained person if they're making the shot. But it's not just me up there. Like he's basically slightly turned, boom, and then you see him turn back around. Whereas like if you just heard the shot and you're the driver, everyone's ducking. So the fact that if you watch the people in the front, they don't duck, they kind of are still upright, makes me think, okay, are you guys expecting a shot? Because the driver up here also would have heard a shot from that second guy. So it's like, if they were there, everyone in that car is like complicit in like that action happening.
Just like right there. I'm going to see. Dude, it's like the second he turns, the shot hits, I swear.
Yeah, and
it's
it blows
really
like
tough to
half
see.
of his face off too, which is crazy.
But yeah, wow. Yeah, so that was definitely interesting. But there's it doesn't go with the story that we've been told. Like that just doesn't make sense to me. And I really don't know whether Oswald fired a shot or not, but I don't think he did, dude.
Yeah, I mean the fact that we just have that footage is mind blowing to me.
And it's just recently we've got, better angles, higher quality.
Yeah.
I did want to just pull this up real quick too. So this is a Wikipedia article to make it easy. But basically, we'll just go through here. This is the connection between Lincoln and Kennedy assassinations.
Yeah.
So these two have a ridiculous amount of things in common. And so... other people have talked about this, but this is just wild. So this also kind of adds to the mystery. But we just have it. Yeah, all right. So Lincoln and Kennedy are both spelled with 7 letters. Both presidents were elected in Congress in 46, one in 1846, one in 1946, right? Both assassins were born in 39. And we're known by 3 names: John Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald. Booth ran from a theater and was caught in a warehouse. Oswald ran from a warehouse and was caught in a theater. The assassins were both Southerners. Both president's successors were Democrats named Johnson, Lyndon B. Johnson, and
I don't know who Lincoln's successor was.
I'm blanking on it. I read it earlier.
I'll look it up real quick.
Then both Lincoln and Kennedy were particularly concerned with civil rights. Basically
Andrew
meaning
Johnson.
Andrew Johnson, that's right. But Lincoln, of course, he the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing the slaves. That's a civil rights movement, but also the civil rights movement in the 60s. Kennedy was in office. So both presidents were shot in the head on a Friday. In the presence of their wives. Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy, who told him not to go to Ford's Theater. Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln. It's probably where am I? Oh yeah, secretary named Lincoln, and she warned him not to go to Dallas. Both Oswald and Booth were both killed before they could get put on trial. Yep, that's how that happens.
Of a coincidence?
There's a couple more that are not listed on here too. One of them being the fact that Kennedy was killed in a Lincoln automobile.
Oh.
Lincoln is owned by Ford.
That'd be crazy.
President Lincoln, was killed in Ford Theater. And there's a lot of like just weird little things that they're super mirrored.
I'm telling you, it's too many coincidences.
I can't write it off.
Like the amount of people like, oh, like if there's 1,000 coincidences, you're like, yep, that's just crazy. It's like there has to be another reason behind this.
100%. But that's just like, I don't know, it's wild. It makes me think the connections between those two assassinations show how long ago, like whoever's operating these assassinations in the 60s, they were doing it when Lincoln was president. You know, they've probably been doing it longer than that. It really just shows the age and like the power that they have for real.
Yeah, so. Definitely. And I'm still trying to find, I mean, I was looking at it earlier and I, for some reason, cannot find the actual like detailed background about like the assassination of JFK and everything. So give me 1 second as I look for these.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually crazy that I can't find any of these things. Also, just the amount of documents related to this is insane. Like 50,000 documents. Like how many of them are just blank pages, just ridiculous.
I don't even think Grok knows what to make of it all.
I mean, Grok should. The fact that it's AI, like they're obviously not letting him fully discuss, because in 10 minutes, he could easily search the whole thing and be like, yep, this is structure, this is motive, this comes from this over here.
Yeah.
Like he could easily put it together, but yeah, we're not being told anything. And it's going to take somebody years, probably 2 years to go through everything.
Dude.
And the red string on the board thing, like connecting all the dots, like...
Well, like how long it took to get to the bottom of 9/11, or like even just the stuff that we do know about JFK.
Yeah.
You know, it's been over 50 years for sure. So, yeah, it takes a long time before they're willing to let us get in there, or we're just able to chip away at stuff. But it takes people trying to connect the dots, and that means not ignoring coincidences.
Yeah.
There's way too many of them. They have to mean something. And I'm not saying you should jump to conclusions like, oh, that's crazy, that means this specific thing, but just keep it all on the table, because, you know, like you're saying, we'll learn a lot more about this stuff, and the less you write off, the more there is to piece together.
Yeah. So it says, so we're going to go over the actual like incident of the shots, right? So the assassination itself took place at 12:30 p.m. It would have been November 23rd, 1963. So it says, per the government archives, as the president's open limousine proceeded at approximately 11 miles per hour, which if you haven't shot a gun and something's going 11 miles per hour, you have to be moving with that, taking a shot, and to hit on your first shot is insane, especially if you haven't had a warm up. Like, I'm not sure if you guys have ever like gone to the gym and tried to do an exercise immediately, or I don't know if you play chess or something, or you do something the first time, you're always going to suck until you've warmed your body up to that motion. So the fact that somebody is showing up on one day, having a caliber rifle to make that shot, and your first shot of the day, you just hit like middle, like
and at what a time to shoot too, while she's leaned over. Like, if you were a sniper trying to make that shot, that's not the time you would do it
at all. You'd wait for him to freaking stop, or you'd shoot multiple times. Like it's crazy. But anyway, so was traveling 11 miles per hour along Elm Street towards the Triple Underpass. Shots fired from a rifle mortally wounded President Kennedy and seriously injured Governor Conley. One bullet passed through the president's neck. A subsequent bullet, which was lethal, shattered the right side of his skull. Governor Connolly sustained bullet wounds in his back, the right side of his chest, right wrist, and left thigh.
So the autopsy states 2 shots in Kennedy.
Yeah. So the whole idea is obviously there's multiple shots. People then think multiple shooters, but bullets tumble, bullets can travel through. If there is, and again, I think Lee Harvey Oswald could have shot a gun. Like he could have shot, but the fact that you're giving him so much credit, either he was super close and knew exactly where the car, the open limousine was going to be, that he was able to take 8 to 10 shots and just spray in the direction. But the fact that he was able to hit middle on his throat and the right side of his brain, instantly basically killing him, and then not touching Jackie, not touching anybody else in the limousine.
And that's key too.
Like, to me is like, that's impressive. Anyway, but like we just watched the video too. So it's like, that for me is like another thing of like she is so close to him, and how she doesn't get hit is like mind blowing to me. Okay.
Did you notice the smile? She almost looks at the camera even before.
It's crazy, right? So the exact time was 12:30. Apparently, as soon as the shots were fired, the person in the front, it said he looked at his watch and said 12:30 to the driver, signifying like they had to know exactly when. So that's obviously something that you're trained in Secret Service, is if the president does get shot, you need to know the exact moment and time that he got shot, because it plays into the investigation, obviously. So it makes sense that he did that. I hope they don't. I mean, if you watch the video we just saw, you see the driver turn around. So it's like, I hope they're not attributing that to, oh, well, that's when he was looking at his watch. Because it's like,
yeah, that's not it.
That agent could have just been
There's not enough time to process that and look at your watch.
Because then you have to be like a psychopath to be like, he just got shot. Cool. It's 12:30. Yeah. Like, if it was me, I mean, because you look at what happened with President Trump, right? Shots fired. It took a couple seconds for people to get up on that stage. Because
it did.
The human reaction is, oh my gosh, shots are being fired. Duck. Oh, I have to do my job. Get on stage. Whereas this, you watch the video, it doesn't look like he was like, oh crap, shots fired. It looks like, I turn around, okay, he's dead. Okay, 12:30. Oh, let's act and pretend that I'm freaking out. Anyway,
I don't know.
The what do you call it? The speed of the limousine. Obviously, we went over that. Okay, the presidential limousine. So Mrs. John F. Kennedy, or
Jackie Onassis,
was on the left side of the rear of the limousine, looked toward her left and waved to the crowds along the route. Soon after the motorcade turned onto Elm Street, she heard a sound similar to a motorcycle noise and a cry from Governor Connolly, which caused her to look to her right. On turning, she saw a quizzical look on her husband's face as he raised his left hand to his throat. Mrs. Kennedy then heard a second shot and saw the president's skull torn open under the impact of the bullet. As she cradled her mortally wounded husband, Mrs. Kennedy cried, "Oh my God, they have shot my husband. I love you, Jack." So, that's a lot just right there. Like, you could see him like going toward her and cradling, right? That's when they say that he got shot in his throat. I don't know about you, but if you get shot in your throat by a rifle round, you'd be paralyzed.
Yeah.
That's going straight through your spine. If it's a rifle round, it's not just, and again, if it's FMJ and you barely miss, sure, you wouldn't collapse.
Yeah.
But if he gets hit in the skull and you see that giant explosion, same thing would have happened with his throat.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're like, oh, well, he got shot through the throat, and then he quizzically is looking at his wife and is saying, ow, my throat hurts. I'm sorry. But if I got shot in the throat, I would be dead, or would be on the ground. Like, I wouldn't just be like, oh my gosh, what happened to my throat? Like, he wasn't under adrenaline. He was at a parade. He's been president for a while. Like, he's not just like, oh, I'm going in the middle of a basketball stadium in front of 50,000 people to try to win a car. It's not like he's already amped up on something like, and the fact that she then cradles over to him, because it said she heard somebody else get shot. Okay, whatever. He could have missed his first 2 shots, but like the fact that they're saying, oh, she looked over at him and he was like, oh, my throat. And then his head just gets blown off. The side, like the view,
It's impossible.
What we just showed you guys was his head goes back, like and
back into the left.
like I'm not saying we want to show you videos, but like there's videos out there of people getting shot in the head. You know, the Russia-Ukraine thing is going on. Like there's videos out there of people unfortunately getting blown to pieces, and you can see videos of how physics work on someone's head. If you get shot, your head's going to go the way of the bullet because that's the centrifugal force taking the matter with the bullet. If you get shot in the side, your head's not going to go straight up. It's going to go to the side, especially if he's sitting down, relaxed. Like he's not flexing, he's not tensing. And it like, I don't know, it's crazy. Now, the only way to make his head go back is if he got hit super high on that shot. But the way that he's leaned over, like he's hunched over. He's not just like standing up straight, which would make his head jump back if he got shot like from the side. But like he was like bending over.
To me, it only makes sense if he got shot from inside that car.
Yeah, 100%. Like again, like you're saying, I don't know. Those people just must be lucky that they didn't get shot. Because the only explanation is like he got shot, somebody else behind him got shot, or wherever that governor was sitting, and nobody else in that car got touched. Like, so anyway, I'm going to continue reading, but like to me, it's like all you have to do is say, this is what happened. Because who knows how long, if this was a conspiracy theory inside job, who knows how long they've planned this? Especially if they knew, okay, this is where the car is going to be. We know that Lee Harvey Oswald is going to take some shots from here. All right, we know that this is like you can plan all this stuff out, especially back in the 60s. Yeah, when it's like there is no technology. You don't have to worry about somebody listening to you. You can just go to a park and talk about it. Like you don't have to worry about people snooping and spying, especially when you're in the government. And especially if it's as corrupt as JFK was trying to prevent it from being. Like,
yeah, they must have been really getting away with it back then.
Yeah.
Did you see some stuff about it potentially being like some sort of crazy gun that shoots like I forget what it was, like basically compressed shrimp balls that like make you have an allergic reaction or something.
I've heard
a lot of people were saying that was a thing. I don't really know where that came from. But yeah, that was always a weird one too.
I think they said there might have been like something poisonous or something, so that way if he did get shot and did survive, he would have succumbed because of the poison or something like that. That's something I think I remember hearing, but
because then also, if it was say a shot, like I mean I don't know because it does look like chunks come out the back. So,
but like he would have died. Like because the whole point is like if we rewatch the video, if he just fell over, right, and just because he would have been paralyzed instantly. I'm not sure if he would have died instantly getting shot in the throat, but like he would have been paralyzed. So like. He wouldn't have been able to reach his hand up.
But if it was like some sort of like allergic thing that makes him go into anaphylactic shock and he's just like...
Yeah, just holding his throat.
Like,
yeah.
And then maybe it's just compressed air and a bunch of shit coming out of that goes past his head that looks like it came out of his head.
Yeah, I mean, there's... Yeah. Let me finish reading this real quick.
Yep. I did find this though, actually. So Jackie Onassis, like that's not even her, like she is an alternate name.
Yeah.
This Lee Bouvier, I don't know where that comes from or what that means, but I just found this earlier today and I don't know. It seems like another secret, like an offshoot of the Onassises or something. I'm not sure. 100%. I'm going to look into it.
All right, so we're talking about the driver of the car now. So the driver was William Greer, heard a noise which he took to be a backfire from one of the motorcycles flanking the president's car. when he heard, okay, first of all, if you shoot guns, you know what a gun sounds like when it gets shot. You know what a motorcycle backfire sounds when it gets shot. Just saying, there's a very distinctive sound, especially if you're close, like and you're outside. Like if you're outside, a vehicle backfires, it's gonna be a fuller sound. It's not gonna be like a bang.
I don't know. In a crowded urban area, sometimes it's tough to make out, under certain conditions. Like if you're right next to the motorcycle backfiring, sure, but like, sometimes you go under a little tunnel or something and it sounds crazy, or like it's just so far away that you can't really hear the details of the sound. It just sounds loud. And in a mass of people, you just heard something loud and then screams or chaos.
Because it says that he heard a noise which he took to be backfire from one of the motorcycles flanking the president's car.
Mm-hmm.
So flanking is behind. So it's like hearing a shot. Because did he get shot from? Are they saying he got shot from behind?
That makes the least amount of sense.
That's what I'm saying. Because it's like if he was flanking, it's like would he turn around, look like? But then the president's getting shot from straight on. That's what I don't get. Anyway, but it says he glanced over his shoulder and saw Governor Connolly fall. At the sound of the second shot, he realized that something was wrong, and he pressed down on the accelerator. As Kellerman said, "Get out of here fast." As he issued his instructions to Greer and to the lead car, Kellerman heard a flurry of shots. Within 5 seconds of the first noise, according to Kellerman, Mrs. Kennedy cried out, "What are they doing to you?" Looking back from the front seat, Kellerman saw Governor Connolly in his wife's lap and Special Agent Clinton J. Hill lying across the trunk of the car. Mrs. Connolly heard a second shot fired and pulled her husband down into her lap, observing his blood-covered chest as he was pulled into his wife's lap. Governor Connolly cried and believed himself mortally wounded and cried out, "Oh, no, 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 my God, they are going to kill us all." At first, Mrs. Connolly thought her husband had been killed, but then she noticed an almost imperceptible movement and knew that he was still alive. She said, "It's all right. Be still." The governor was still lying with his head on his wife's lap when they heard a shot hit the president. At that point, both Governor and Mrs. Connolly observed brain tissue splattered over the interior of the car. So if you look at the photo, they're sitting in front in the same car. So this isn't a different vehicle that they're in. They're in the same vehicle, which would make sense if he's getting shot because it's not like he's the one being targeted, unless he is, and that's a huge conspiracy if JFK wasn't even the target, but that's like out there. But at the same point, it like makes sense if he's getting hit. But the fact that guy gets hit and is in the chest, it says right there, he gets hit and instantly is like, "Oh my gosh." But he got hit in the chest. So what's next to the chest? The throat. So the same thing would have happened to JFK if the first shot hit him in the throat. Because in the video we see, it's not like bang, bang. It's not like half a millisecond of like throat, head. It's like
1 second.
It's like throat and then, "Oh, what's happening to you?" Head.
Yeah.
So he would have reacted just like we're seeing the governor react. He gets shot and then goes down, whereas JFK was probably looking at the guy go down, gets shot here. So for me, it's like, I don't know. That just doesn't make sense.
I don't know, dude. It's crazy because there's so many different situations, and I remember there was even that people were talking about the grassy knoll shooter. That's a whole other angle that a lot of people don't believe in anymore. But
that's in the movie Zoolander, I think.
Yeah, probably.
When they're talking about how they hire like the models to be assassins.
Oh yeah.
They like said that Lee Harvey Oswald was like a model or something like that. And anyway, that's a hilarious movie if you haven't seen it. Okay.
I haven't seen it in a long time.
Let's see here. Let's see. Reserve national moments. Crazy to be the vice president at this point too, by the way. Like,
Yeah, but also not coincidence.
yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
You're ready for that. Like he was for sure ready for it.
And it was Lyndon B. Johnson.
Right. Who then got voted in because he just got to take over, did a decent job to the people.
Yeah.
You know.
And he was responsible for the Nixon Watergate thing too, right?
How was that he was responsible
there's
for
like
just
an-
through
there's like an
the Warren Commission?
Yeah, so there's like an intertwining of like the Warren Commission, Johnson, Watergate, and Nixon, and I think it was because there was like a three-way thing. I think we've talked about this before.
They funded something they weren't supposed to be funding, essentially. The
There
Warren
was
Commission.
So it was like the CIA wanted something in Watergate. The Warren Commission had an investigator that wanted something in Watergate, and there was two guys that were outside hires to break in from the Nixon. Like they hired them. So there's three conflicting parties, I believe, that were there that culminated in Watergate, and then that ended up spewing out what it did. But I think the reason was because there was how this is culminating in Watergate is because there was incriminating evidence or some sort of evidence about JFK assassination at Watergate that they were like trying to get or make sure didn't get out.
I bet you like Watergate must have been wild.
Yeah.
Like actually being in the building would have been insane. Because you got to think about it. There's three interested parties, super powerful, and they're all sending like super discreet tier one, like above tier one
Has
units.
to be.
And so there's a bunch of dudes in like full night vision, all suppressed, like, you know, all black ninjas moving in.
Yeah.
And then there's another group of them over there. And then it's like, it just makes me think of the game Splinter Cell. But, you know, it just must have been crazy. And then we still don't even know exactly what it was.
Yeah. Trying to think. All right, this is from slate.com. I don't know if they're like good or bad or whatever, but
Never heard of them.
so this is the plot link to JFK's death and Watergate. So it's saying November 1973, 10th anniversary of JFK's assassination in Dallas. Some magazine ran a long essay titled From Dallas to Watergate, The Longest Cover-Up. The author was Peter Dale Scott. So the theory was, if I can find it, so elaborate speculations about Kennedy's murder had begun, of course, earlier, almost from the moment he was shot. Shock and grief, along with lingering mysteries, surrounded the killing of and the gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, stoked doubt that a lowly maniac could really snuff out such an august leader and then obviously get killed right after. Is crazy. So I'm trying to get to the part of Watergate. Hold on. Only what its suspicion of certain people, law firm.
And so what year is that? That's like
And the Watergate was in the 70s.
74, somewhere around there.
72, I believe.
72.
Okay, let's see. And where was Watergate at? Can you, or I don't know what.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Trying to remember where that was at. Let's see here. Ball.
It's in D.C.
Okay, so it is in D.C.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It's right next to the DNC.
Because it's really the Democratic National Committee.
Yeah, DNC. Let's see. Full assassination, illustrating power. Why isn't it showing me?
Probably just because you're looking for it.
We'll do,
It
what is it
always
called?
happens.
Spark Notes. It's called The Longest Cover-Up. Okay.
This is a book?
Yes. The Longest Cover-Up Spark Notes.
Sounds like a good book.
Oh, 100%. If it shows me, government doesn't want me to see this. Assassination.
Man, I'm also gonna have to reread Behold a Pale Horse. There's so much in there. I got to dive in.
Yeah. JFK's last word before he died.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. President, they can't make you believe now that there are not some in Dallas who love you and appreciate you. Can they? No, they sure can't. I don't know.
That was his last words?
I don't know. Who remembers
Sounds like
that?
somebody else writing to him or something.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, I can't find it, but let me just keep.
Right.
I'm gonna keep looking because I know that there's like Watergate and assassination.
Honestly, I feel like that's where it went like cold. Like we could follow the story until Watergate, and that's like what is going on until 9/11. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll just do the Wikipedia page just so people can see the whole conspiracy theory. So the CIA Kennedy assassination conspiracy theory is a prominent conspiracy theory about his assassination. And the CIA, the secretive nature of the CIA in conjuncture to the high-profile political assassinations in the United States during the 1960s, basically made the CIA a suspect for all of it. Let's see, origin and history. That's a lot to go into. Okay, conspirators. Okay. Gayton Fonzie was hired as a researcher in 1975 by the Church Committee and by the House of Representatives Select Committee on Assassinations. Fonzie focused on the anti-Castro Cuban exile groups and the links that these groups had with the CIA and the mafia. Fonzie obtained testimony from Cuban exile Antonio Veciana that Veciana had once witnessed his CIA contact, who Fonzie would later come to believe was David at Lee Phillips, conferring with Lee Harvey Oswald. That's probably where you heard that the CIA did have an eye or was in communication with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Well, and also that sort of touches on, well, it's really interesting because then it's talking about Watergate being in connection to, Fidel Castro, essentially. And it sort of goes into where JFK, sort of his initial, I don't know if it was initially where he found out about how corrupt the government was or where it really cracked open for him, but the Cuban Missile Crisis,
Yeah, and there's so much at the same, or not the same time, but in that time.
But it's just interesting that like that's sort of where JFK's public story starts. Yeah. And then that's tied into Watergate too. There's still dealings there. So that makes me wonder, because I still don't exactly know what that was, because the Cuban Missile Crisis is its own cover up in and of itself. But
I gotta sneeze.
Sorry, it's interesting because it's like you have that, you have the assassination, then you have Watergate, then you have 9/11. Yeah, they're all connected for sure.
Yeah. And there's also another. So there's like the multiple shooters thing, but the idea was that what this guy's talking about is that Phillips had played a really big part in the assassination. And when Lee Harvey Oswald went to Mexico, maybe it was an impersonator that went to Mexico so that they thought he was going to Mexico, but it was somebody else and it wasn't actually Lee Harvey Oswald, something like that. That's what they're talking about. Let's see, what's the other one? So several conspiracy theorists have named former CIA agent and Watergate figure E. Howard Hunt as a possible participant in the Kennedy assassination, and some, as noted before, have alleged that Hunt is one of the three tramps. Hunt has taken various magazines to court over accusations with regard to the assassination. The reason that they have him as possible suspect is the three tramps, people that think that also took shots or were involved. They tried to match his photo, and that's why they think it could have been him, which obviously would be very hard to prove, especially because when all that chaos and mayhem is happening.
The issue is there's like no cameras or anything, so you could have documentation, and it works, you know?
Yeah.
Just pay one person off to make fake documentation. You have a paper trail, and now it's a fact.
Yeah. And the reason why people think that Hunt was involved. It says in August 2003, while failing in health, Hunt allegedly confessed to his son of his knowledge of a conspiracy in the JFK assassination. However, Hunt's health improved and he went on to live 4 more years. Shortly after Hunt's death in 2007, he authored an autobiography which implicated Lyndon B. Johnson in the assassination, suggesting that Johnson had orchestrated the killing with the help of CIA agents who had been angered by Kennedy's actions as president. That's what we were talking about. After Hunt's death, his sons, St. John Hunt and David Hunt, stated that their father had recorded several claims about himself and others being involved in a conspiracy to assassinate President Kennedy. So Hunt detailed, his son, St. John, detailed a number of individuals purported to be implicated by his father, including Lyndon B. Johnson, Cord Meyer, David Phillips, Frank Sturgis, David Morales, Antonio Vecina, and William Harvey. So some people that we obviously had just talked about. So how would this guy, obviously people lived through it, the assassination. So these names are familiar to those people at that time. They're not to me because I wasn't around during that time.
Sure.
But it's like, why would some guy just believe that he was a part of it? Like, he wasn't famous. Like this guy they're talking about, he wasn't a famous guy. But like, he was, if I go back, he was a former CIA agent. Like this guy Hunt, Howard Hunt. So it's not
There's
like
no
he was,
such thing either.
yeah.
There's no such thing as a former agent.
Yeah, and so it's not just like he was a nobody. Like if he was a CIA agent, like he would have had the information. Like it puts him in the right place at the right time. It's not just like he was a random person in the crowd who just claimed to have known everything. It's like CIA agents are smart people. You know, they're not just dumb. Like they're smart. They get trained on how to retain information and know all this stuff. So the fact that they're all saying, oh, well, there's no way he did it, like, or what knew of people involved. It's like, anyway. So I'm trying to get to Lyndon B. Johnson and Watergate. Lyndon B. Johnson, Watergate.
Who was the president after him? It was Nixon immediately after?
Yeah. I believe so. No. I'm trying to think here. Hold on. Okay, come on. Okay.
Yeah, man. Just
So-
trying to find stuff is hard.
So yeah, I apologize everybody because this is hard trying to do everything out live. All right. So historians trying to explain the Watergate break-in usually point to an earlier break-in. This is from the Miller Center. To an earlier break-in at the Beverly Hills office of a psychiatrist who had treated Daniel Ellsberg, the man who gave the New York Times the top-secret Defense Department history of Vietnam that became known as Pentagon Papers. Both break-ins had the same masterminds, former CIA agent Howard Hunt and former FBI agent G. Gordon Liddy. So how's the guy who is the quote-unquote mastermind of the Watergate stuff, like he would be the one to know about the CIA assassination of Lyndon B. Johnson? Like he basically would have all these years of remorse and then finally would want to be like, okay, I need to tell somebody about it because he's going to die anyway.
Yeah.
Like, but anyway.
I mean, they all do that. Like whistleblowers come out all the time when they're like done and don't care if they die or they are dying.
Let's see here. I'm trying to think.
And for the record, it was Nixon immediately after Johnson.
Yeah. And a lot of this has to do with so much stuff happening at the same time regarding the war in Vietnam. And like, there's a bunch of stuff like surrounding this. Let's see here. So this is talking about a lot of bombings, breaking into Brookings, state secrets. Let's see here. I'm going to go to a different one. Let's see. Watergate scandal. Okay, we'll just do this one. So Watergate scandal, and obviously this is all tying into the JFK stuff because we're trying to find out like behind who would have made the call.
Right.
Like why, like we were talking about at the very beginning, like if it's a conspiracy theory, it's like why?
Yeah.
So Watergate was a major political scandal involving the administration of President Richard Nixon. Basically, people broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate Hotel, the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C., where they planted listening devices, and Nixon's later attempts to conceal his administration's involvement in the burglary. Let's see here. The burglars received lengthy prison sentences that were told they would be reduced if they cooperated, which began a flood of testimony from witnesses. Nixon appeared on television to deny any wrongdoing. Let's see here. So Nixon obviously ends up resigning. Ford was the one who took presidency after Nixon.
Oh, after Nixon. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. But I thought it was Lyndon B. Johnson had something to do with it. 1 second. LBJ, Watergate.
I think also Google is not your friend for searching for anything conspiracy related. If it's not like a concrete fact that most people can agree on, you're not going to find it easily.
Yeah, probably.
Like I was just looking for because I know there was, of course, some insurance going on as well for like property damage or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always something like that tied to it.
All right. Anyway, I can't find that stuff. But there's also, I think we talked about it before, but obviously the whole UFO thing happened before he was assassinated.
Right.
And, so 10 days before, he basically said he wanted to declassify everything to the public and wanted to come out about UFOs, which is like, okay.
You got to think UFOs were new at the time too. Like I don't think that was a thing in the 50s.
Yeah. So to me, it's like, okay, something must have been happening, because if it did come about, it would have happened in the 40s or 50s. If UFOs were discovered or technology or something like that was found to have existed, he probably was like, well, we need to tell people about this. And then he could have been assassinated just off of that. If you have somebody like Lyndon B. Johnson or somebody who was above him at the time and was like, no, he can't release this, we need to do something. And they could have already had a plan orchestrated at that time. But like, I think it could have been a culmination of a bunch of different stuff.
I don't know if aliens is the kicker, but it could. I mean, it's an easy card to push because it's like, yeah, that's clearly sensitive information. But I think it was more so the corruption that JFK was worried about. But if he could show people like, hey, they're hiding the aliens from us, that just shows like, hey, don't trust these people. There's obviously corruption. They're lying about that. Wait till I show you all the other stuff that really affects you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So I'm going to read the excerpt that is like one of the declassified documents regarding him saying he wants it like put out to the public. So it says classification review of all UFO intelligence files affecting national security. And I believe this is JFK writing this. As I have discussed with you previously, I have initiated something that's redacted and have instructed James Webb. What's James Webb? Isn't it a telescope?
Is it? I have no idea.
You're look it up real quick. I'm pretty sure the James Webb telescope is something, which makes you wonder if they created the James Webb telescope, what are they looking for? Anyway, so it says,
yeah, it's a telescope.
Instructed James Webb to develop a program with the Soviet Union in joint space and lunar exploration. So, if he wants to partner with the Soviet Union, right? Obviously, nobody wants to partner with the Soviet Union, but they also want to partner about going and exploring the moon, because what the lunar is, exploring the moon. Why would you want to partner with another strong space agency to look at the moon? It would be very helpful if you would have the high threat cases reviewed with the purpose of identification of bona fide as opposed to classified CIA and United States Air Force sources. It is important that we make a clear distinction between the knowns and unknowns in the event of the Soviets try to mistake our extended cooperation as a cover for intelligence gathering of their defense and space programs. When this data has been sorted out, I would like you to arrange a program of data sharing with NASA where the unknowns are a factor. This will help NASA mission directors in their defense responsibilities. I would like to an interim report on the data review no later than February 1st, 1964.
What the hell do you think that means? The knowns and the unknowns, and that's pretty much the benefit of bringing the Soviets in is now factoring in the unknowns. What, just they know things we don't? Is that what they're trying to say? I mean, that's pretty straightforward with a partnership.
Yeah.
It doesn't explain anything.
For me, it could be one of those things that, okay, we have telescopes that can look at the moon and stuff at that point, right? Like we don't have anything really in space, but we have stuff like on Earth. So it's almost like if we partner with Russia or partner with the Soviet Union or whatever at that time, we're able to then cooperate and go and do these things together, because at that point it's greater than the wars going on. It's like if we partner and look at this, we're able to share information, do this. But the knowns and unknowns could be something as simple as space exploration, or the knowns of like known UFO technology and unknown.
That could be it, yeah, where if it was like, hey, we're the most advanced and far into looking into space and all this stuff, we both sort of encountered aliens and go, hey, we need each other to really figure this out, navigate that, and keep it private. Or the other thing is like the entire time it's like, we have the Cold War and all this tension and all this whatever, and it's like space exploration. Why does that even matter at the time? It's like there's almost an obsession with space that doesn't really benefit anybody, to be honest. Like we always say, the ocean we don't know.
Yeah.
Why aren't we concerned with the ocean?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't affect us. That's why. It is a massive way to basically just steal funds from other places and, just have it vanish for stupid projects. And then the other thing, like maybe because of Cold War tensions, it's publicly sort of this like plan for peace sort of thing where they're trying to sell a vision of the future of unity to everybody to make tensions, because they want the threat of everything to be as high as possible, but the tensions of it as like they want everybody to be comfortable with that threat. Like that's the idea.
And especially if his idea was peace with the Soviet Union in regards to space exploration or the understanding of the knowns and unknowns, but you have somebody like Lyndon B. Johnson who's in there and maybe he's like, no, not that we want the war, but we want the heightened threat of war because it mass produces stuff. Right? Like you're able to go and make money. So it's like he was threatening, because if there's peace, then like, for instance, like gun sales or ammo sales, if it's peace, there's not a lot of them. But if there's wartime, it goes up. So it's like the war was heightening and you're making all this money. And if you're coming out and saying, hey, we're going to do peace, then all that goes away. And it's like the fact that happened, and it says like in there, he said no later than February 1st, 1964, which means this is before the assassination.
Right.
So it's like that could also play a huge part in it.
I'm really baffled by because we were talking for a while about so many different angles.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then we retouched on, the Soviets having something to do with it. And it was like, man, that's the other crazy thing. What is that? It goes so far back, the Soviet involvement with the U.S. and like, what is that? Where did that start from? What was it over? And, like how much has it developed? How far has it gone? How much is non-existent anymore and just fizzled out? How much is like super rooted in what's going on? Yeah. We have zero idea. And like, they could be two separate entities. They could be two sides of one entity that's like, maybe there's a shadow government in the US and then there's a shadow government in the Soviet Union. Yeah. Or maybe even now Russia, who knows, whatever. And they collaborate and they're sort of one organization, but they're playing both countries to their face. and all the people and could get away with it. But it also could be like absolute, you know, they're playing a secret war game, but they can't let us know exactly what that is. So both of them almost defend, they project it to be one thing, but they're both playing differently behind the scenes. So we'll never really be able to tell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think the argument for the space race was who can be the first to weaponize space. But then they had the idea of, okay, we're going to weaponize the moon. So then it's like, that's like the ultimate pinnacle thing is like we have a stationary base that can shoot at the Earth or whatever. That must have been like the idea behind the space race. But I mean, a previous episode, I think it was the one before this, we had talked about that file saying that there are EBTs and EBEs on the dark side of the moon and saying like that's why you couldn't go to the moon and weaponize the moon. So then it's like,
dude, the fact that we talked about this, but the fact the moon doesn't rotate either, there's something up with that. And I don't know if you've heard about like some people say, oh, maybe it's like a Death Star or something, like a giant spaceship, or maybe it's hollow, or just maybe it's artificial. It's man-made.
Yeah.
But yeah, the moon it doesn't seem natural to me, and the obsession with the moon specifically, but also space, is very weird. And you know, like NASA, of course, they're sort of the pioneers over here in the US for that, but that all comes from like, you know, German Nazi obsession with occultism and stars and all that type of stuff. And I don't know, there's a lot of like all this space stuff and like star obsession and all this. It's like super occultish. It's super like Masonic, or like just all these different groups. And it's like the fact that that's such a focus for them, it doesn't make any sense to me, but like it really makes a big question. Like, what is it that is so appealing to that? Is it actually a benefit for them, whoever's interested in this space thing, where maybe if you're the first to go out there and collect some valuable things, there's really something to do out there? Or if they're obsessed with selling that idea of, you know, space exploration, the future, trust in, you know, somebody to lead you there, or if it's just symbolism at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because, you know, those the NASA photos are all like composite and stuff.
Yeah, true. So it did say, oh gosh. So I looked up, gosh, I hate when my phone does this. Hold on one second. So moon landings, right?
Yeah.
Times did we go to the moon? So
like y'all really couldn't have did it twice?
So it says during the Apollo program, there were 6 successful crewed missions that landed on the moon, with a total of 12 astronauts walking on the lunar surface between 1969 and 1972. So Apollo 11 was Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were the first to walk on the moon. Actually, the first person to walk on the moon was the cameraman.
Right.
Or whoever that was. Apollo 12 was Pete Conrad and Alan Bean. Apollo 14, Alan Shepard and Edgar Mitchell. Apollo 15, David Scott and James Irwin. Apollo 16, John Young and Charles Duke. Apollo 17, Gene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt. Apollo 13, although it didn't land on the moon, it is notable for an emergency return to Earth after oxygen tank exploded. And then Apollo 8, 10, 18, 19, and 20 were not moon landing missions. So we went to the moon
6 times, supposedly.
Apparently 6 times, supposedly. But the first one is notable because that's the one that people think didn't happen, that we didn't actually go.
But then the other stuff is like nobody's really heard that we've been to the moon those other 5 times.
Yeah.
Like, why don't we talk about that? Why is there no?
Yeah.
Because what I heard was we've been to the moon, we haven't been back since. Like that's what everybody thinks.
Yeah. And so the only reason that we wouldn't have gone back is if they basically were like, okay, there's nothing here. Or they were basically told like, somebody said you can't keep coming back. Because if we kept going, if we went one time and that was it, they would have been like, okay, cool, they visited, whatever. But if there's something there on the moon and then they're realizing, oh, they keep coming back, like, why did it just stop? Like, why wasn't there? Because if you're going to the moon, you could be like, okay, well, we want to go investigate further or land somewhere closer to the dark side of the moon. And it's like, why didn't we do that?
Well, it's almost like why you can't really go to Antarctica.
Yeah.
You know, it makes me wonder if there's maybe some secret treaty to like you just can't be over there, or it's really probably some secret group that controls whatever,
Yeah.
doesn't let anybody go there. Same thing with the the South Pole. They say it's like Nazi scientists based down there, and
Yeah.
they're inside the pyramids. But having restricted areas like that you just deem as like and the Bermuda Triangle being another one. It's like everybody knows, just don't go there. Nothing works. It's all like that could be super intentional, and also
Yeah.
under the water there. Like who's diving in the Bermuda Triangle?
Yeah. 100%.
Nobody.
And that's why, I mean, going back to the JFK thing, it's like, if he was that big of a threat that he was going to open the public's eyes to all of these things that we view as conspiracy theories, that he was just cool and open with sharing, of course they're going to kill him. Because for me, it's like, if you look at what he wanted to do, because like what we said about the Lincoln and his things that he shared, if he cared about, the, what's it called? The race tensions and stuff. Like, he was trying to end all that, right?
Civil rights
movement. So he was trying to instill civil rights movement. He was trying to, release the stuff on the UFOs. He was trying to make peace with the Soviet Union. There's a lot of things there that are anti-CIA and anti-established government, because those are all things that they use to control people.
And they're making money off all that stuff too.
Yeah. So it's like, if he's coming in and threatening to do all that, of course they'd want to kill him. And if his vice president, I believe, is Lyndon B. Johnson, of course he'd be the person to be like, okay, this is crazy. I mean, and you can see the same thing with Trump and Vance. Not saying Vance is trying to kill Trump, but like, Vance has different opinions on like the way the world should be run, or the way America should be run. So it's like, it's not too far to be like, okay, the vice president might not fully agree with the president, but if the vice president is like a rhino hawk about like military and all this stuff, but the president isn't, you could see how the vice president would be offended and be like, we need to do something. And you could easily find people, you can make a plan, especially the technology back there. You're not able to track. That's why everything is like in these giant files and stuff. It's not just.
Well, even like if there was JFK's president, and clearly he's going against the grain, and the rest of the government, or at least the people that have the control inside the government, are not helping JFK. They're doing anything they can to not help him, essentially.
Yeah.
And if you're Lyndon B. Johnson, you're like, hey, we have a president that can't really do anything. He's not getting support or help. And then he sort of gets an opportunity like, hey, if we gave you the reins and you actually had the support and people were doing everything, it's pretty easy to, whether he was aware of an actual assassination or not, sort of, just get talked into that corner.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do? Like, if you're the vice president and like the Illuminati is going to kill the president, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you might as well, if you're in that deep, just go, okay, well, I don't want to die like that guy. Let me try to do a better job. Something justifiable to make it seem like you're not a bad guy. You're just doing what the country needs,
Yeah. And then I'm going to look at because we talked about Bob Lazar, and this all ties in a second.
Yeah, I super believe that guy, because you know what we didn't talk about Bob Lazar was that recently, in like the last 4 years, his house just got raided. Years later. So he was in that compartment. If you guys want to check out what we're talking about, go check out last episode. But there was, he was compartmentalized in there working on that levitation technology for UFOs with some sort of new element that doesn't exist, like isotope 54 or something like that.
It was like 151 or something weird.
But they basically claim that maybe he discovered what it is, how it's made, like how to format it, or maybe he stole some from there. And they had been, I think they checked him pretty much, years after he left and a whole bunch of stuff. But there had been a period of probably like at least 20, maybe 25 years of him, being fine, being completely out of the program as much as you can be. And they said he doesn't have anything. Then all of a sudden, who knows what happened, but they came storming in. They were looking for the thing. They were pretty much convinced that he had this crazy isotope that he wasn't supposed to have.
Yeah.
That's, revolutionary. And I actually kind of want to look into it, but I don't know like how free he is right now or what his situation is, or maybe if he's confined to NDAs or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it happened in 1989, so this would have been after obviously the JFK stuff is when he like went there. But if you follow the money line in the 40s or 50s, if they would have discovered the UFO technology, and that could have been excavation, crash site, whatever, right? In my opinion, there is no original crash site. It's kind of like an excavation. You find something, okay, let's try to fly this thing. You crash one, you're like, oh crap. You know, then that's the whole UFO thing, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually you build. I mean, that's another thing with like modern day building stuff. If you find an excavation, it's a lot easier to build a structure around it to preserve it than it is to move something. Because moving something requires a lot of logistical secrecy, and that's pretty freaking hard to do. So instead, you can build something around that thing. That way, it gives you the ability to go research it whenever you
Like
want.
you're saying, like there's a crash site and then they built Area 51 on top of it, for example.
Correct. So it's like you can have these areas where you find something and then you just build something around it, because then you can research and keep it in that stationary location.
Well, and also, you know, the explanation for Area 51 and all the surrounding areas is that it's a nuclear test site. And so that's a great alibi for having something radioactive. It's like, why are these reading? Oh, because they do experimental nuclear tests out here.
Yeah, and they could be testing, you know, what's it called? A substance like
Some sort of isotope or element
150
propulsion.
Like that's the thing, right? What not a better place to test something than a nuclear site that's designated, which means people aren't going to go there.
Oh, you know what? Okay, while we're talking about Area 51, I don't know if you've seen this, but somebody out there probably knows what I'm talking about. There's these underground facilities all over the U.S., right? There's a lot of different kinds. Of course, there's like a whole subterranean series of levels underneath all of America. But in specific places, and you'll notice this mostly when you're maybe driving through your state, you know, on like highways and stuff, or sort of, but off to the side of the road, there's these giant, it looks like, so you're driving on the road, and then it's like built up hills on the side, but it's all made out of like stones or these rock wall sort of things pieced together. If you really look at those things, you'll find like a dirt trail road that'll go off, but there's an entrance somewhere on all these things.
Yeah.
And outside of them all, they have flags from like, you know, a bunch of different countries.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're all NATO or what, but a bunch of flags outside. And it's basically just this cave entrance that you could drive into. And there's videos of people driving it. Maybe I'll try to pull it up in a sec. But people have driven into these caves. When you get in there, it's very obvious the entire thing was strip mined with TNT, right? It's this big, crazy place. And you go in there, and it's just a long hallway that you could keep driving down, almost like a tunnel, really. But on your left and your right, there's just hallways that go in each direction, and they're sort of like off limits. And this is where sort of who knows what's down there, but definitely some like off the grid programs operate down there, scientific stuff.
Oh yeah.
And you'll see people on like golf carts riding around in like hazmat suits from different compartmentalized areas driving, and they don't talk. Nobody talks to anybody. You just go where you're going. And so because of that, if you're ballsy enough to just go in there, people aren't going to question you for the most part if you look like you're supposed to be there doing whatever. Some people have probably gotten a lot of trouble for that type of stuff, but those places are all over the country. And it just looks like a bunch of people from like Monsters Inc. down there. You know, the people that bust in.
Oh yeah.
I forget exactly how that tied to what you were talking about. Something about aliens, probably.
No, yeah. People building locations on top of UFOs. So
that's probably why like a lot of those are there too, all over the country.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, he was talking about, I mean, we were talking about Area 51, but it's like you can put a building over the crash site, and then you can build a complex around it and give the excuse, oh, nuclear testing, oh, we're building this. And it's like we talked about last episode, like you need money to fund these things, right? So if like you need money, a couple episodes ago, what if you need money as a distraction, right? You're like, okay, I'm going to use $200 billion to fund towards NASA. And let's say this NASA money is going to Area 51, but 100 billion of it gets allocated to this secret test site where they're looking at UFOs, right? Because you need the money for the research.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you do it. You would have to hide it because you could say, yeah, the money is going towards Area 51, but what's in Area 51? The UFO crash site. So it's like, I think there's a lot of that happening where there's a lot of places that are, oh, like we're doing this remodel or we're doing this, but it's like on top of a crash site. And then he's pulling up the video right now of like the underground tunnels we're talking about. And there's also a lot of tunnels that are under like LA or New York or stuff like that for people to drive under.
Let me see if I can make this bigger, find what I'm looking for.
That's just top 15
Yeah.
tunnels.
I don't know if it's going to come up, but I know exactly what I'm looking for.
The LA tunnels.
That's not it. I don't know. It's probably going to be just tough to find off of just searching underground tunnels. But man, there's a specific video of some dude in a pickup truck driving down one of those and just explaining how crazy this is, and it's pretty good.
I've seen that video too. I know exactly what you're talking about. There was a guy talking about too, like kind of the same like topic of tunnels, but he said there was like a Starbucks that was like underground in LA, and that's where all like the super rich people and wealthy people they don't travel on the normal highways. They all go underground to travel, and they have their own like restaurants and stuff down there.
Yeah, and I think that's probably like LA has this crazy underground.
Yeah.
A couple other cities have it too, but especially in LA. And then it reminds me of like Disneyland, because Disneyland has crazy underground levels and weird like child kidnapping areas, and Disneyland is insane. I'm trying to find this thing. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but so we were sort of talking about the space obsession and NASA.
It's not on the screen, by the way.
Yeah, I'll pull it up here.
Okay.
And NASA, and they're founded by Nazis essentially, and a lot of their ideology, focus, and occultism ended up over there, and is still probably pushing it. But that dude Werner von Braun that founded it, being Hitler's right hand man, he was basically just a mad scientist that was set on all sorts of crazy things and allowed to do them. One thing that Hitler put him on to do specifically, this was Hitler's dream, was this thing. I'm gonna pull it up now. It is called Die Glock, which is German for the bell. And it's this crazy thing. I don't know. There's other pictures of like supposed models that they made. But it's this huge device that they put together. And essentially, if you think about it, it's a big bell. And so bells, they resonate sound. And we were talking about the last couple of episodes, sound having a lot of power as far as levitation or just altering things through frequencies. The pyramids could have been created with sound, right? He sort of had this interesting idea of, a lot of people say this is either a time machine or something else similar to that. Let's see, but so it's based off of Nikola Tesla's 0-point technology. I don't know if that's somebody's book talking about the same subject, but essentially, and I don't know when Nikola Tesla died, but it shortly before this, I'm sure. So it was very fresh discoveries about energy going on, free point energy being this sort of free, just floating in the air like Wi-Fi, and you could charge your phone just out of the air. Sort of technology. And so this thing is sort of like, the idea is that it would pull all this free energy in there, create some sort of frequency with it, and it would do something. A lot of people say it was like a time machine is what Hitler was ultimately trying to do. Which
this also says like energy suppression, anti-gravity, or like a miracle weapon.
But also, and a lot of people say this is just a UFO. And so that's sort of the big thing. People say that UFOs are not alien at all. They're just our technology. And it's like there used to be like the 60s UFOs that you would see they're old and clunky and look kind of corny compared to
100%.
what you would see now. They're very modern and sleek and like streamlined.
Yeah.
So this being like Nazi interest in some sort of alien technology that's also being hidden from us, but this alien technology is just Nikola Tesla's discoveries.
Yeah.
But they use it for this. Who knows if it could have time travel abilities or maybe warping somewhere abilities or whoever knows, but at the least a flying vehicle that can just hover.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to go in any direction and it doesn't rely on like counter anything. So they can also submerge in water and they're fully sealed, and whatever technology it uses to propel itself also propels everything else off of it, you know, so it's safe. So I thought that was really interesting.
Cause it goes back to, I think we talked about it before, but like UFOs, right? The whole idea is like, okay, can a UFO break the sound barrier? Why doesn't it break the sound barrier? But then it begs the question, can sound break the sound barrier? Because if we're talking about frequencies,
Now you're on something.
if we are talking about sound frequencies being the straight propulsion, but sound frequencies being created from some sort of energy, would it then have to break the sound barrier if frequency is the energy source? So for me, it's like that would be a very interesting idea.
And just to give a very good visual representation, this is something I was talking about the other episode also.
Yeah.
It's called cymatics. It's the scientific field of frequency and the way it controls matter.
Yeah.
So we don't have any sound on for this, but and this is a crazy video of what this guy's doing. He's got some cool setup. But this is the central concept, is that there's sand on this dish. It's a subwoofer with just a plate on top. You put sand on it and you play different frequencies. It makes these geometric patterns just based on what frequency you're playing. It's like music is creation, like 100%. And if you really think about it, like sound is no different than light. It's no different than electricity. It's no different. It's just a different spectrum of the same thing. And so just the way that an electronic signal could produce an exact geometric image on your screen, like the earth works that way too. The analog world that we live in, or organic world that we live in, works the same way. So this is insane, like the way it changes. But you can see as you increase it, just naturally the particles move to where they're supposed to be. It works in water, works in all things. And the faster you go, the more intricate these shapes get, and it goes in order. It's like if you know anything about like the flower of life, right? You start with a couple simple circles, but the more you keep adding onto this pattern and connecting these dots, like it gets really intricate. All those same patterns are found right here.
Yeah.
The exact same ones. So, but yeah, it's, and I mean, that's just cool too. The way that you can change, you know, that the water's floating because of the sound.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we were talking about with the pyramids. It's like, if you could harness that on a bigger level, you could do anything. So, yeah, just crazy.
That's super crazy. I mean, I've also seen like people have flames and they play a sound at the flames and the flames like adjust and stuff.
I think I've seen this before. I think he does that at some point.
It might be towards the end, but yeah, it's like super crazy, especially just thinking about.
Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, so there's like the sound wave just going through the fire.
Yeah.
Which is also really interesting because fire is like, you know, you went to science class in school, they were like, there's solids, gases, and liquids. And it's like, they didn't tell you about plasma.
Yeah.
What is that? Oh, there's these in-between states that you could be in. And like, it's clearly a good medium because it's in between something, you know?
Yeah.
But water, I don't know. Water, like small little particles or plasma, I guess. But there's no reason you couldn't do that with bigger objects. Because a particle is just a small, like a cube, if you shrunk it down, would be a grain of sand. So if you did that on a larger scale, giant, you know, bricks like the pyramid, it's possible.
But yeah, that's crazy. I mean, just that concept of like sound or like sound creating sound. But then you go back to like Bob Lazar saying that he found an element that can enhance something to have anti-gravity, but it's almost like a reaction of two substances causing anti-gravity. Because it's like if you can't create energy, right? Energy is always just here. So it's like you have to harness it. And if you can find two materials that, while put together, they create some sort of frequency to then levitate something, almost like, this is going to be really out there for me to say this, but you know, whenever you drop a coin and it starts vibrating super fast, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So imagine you have half of a sphere, because this is kind of what Bob Lazar was talking about. You have half a sphere with the core inside of it. You drop the other top on, like the other half of the sphere on top, right? And what if there's millions of vibrations happening because there's a magnetic pole that's pulling down and pushing away, but it's causing friction on the inside of it, causing vibrations. But it's happening at such a small level that there's trillions and trillions of vibrations that it's causing the frequency to then lift and become anti-gravity.
Because what is frequency if not speed? That's all it is. It's like, what speed is anything at? That's the frequency of it. And so I thought about this too. And I actually thought about this after first discovering Bob Lazar, because I was like, how could this work? And there was more information too about like how it potentially could work that really got me thinking. But I came up with a concept, which was, and I don't remember all the pieces to where I thought this made perfect sense, but if you had basically counter rotations, it's all counter rotations, 100%. You have two, different polarities acting on a central object that then makes that central object turn in a third way, and all three of these it makes it like rotate in a certain way it's never going to fall because it's catching itself and like propelling itself.
It's perpetual motion.
It's perpetual motion, but normally it's like, it's one thing that has to wait for the other thing to hit it, and then it's going to slow down and lose it. But by having that third force,
it's always hitting it.
It's like, So, but my idea essentially was, if you just had a thin disc, like imagine a UFO, right?
Yeah.
And then just that top half of the dish has Mercury was my idea. I think it makes some sense, and I forget exactly why, but Mercury rotating in one direction, Mercury rotating in the other direction, and then sort of like an egg, really long cylindrical piece in the middle. And like it would for sure hover in and of itself without any outside force if it had, electricity or some sort of something to just activate those currents.
But because we just saw the vibrations causing waves on water.
Yeah.
So if you have something that can cause a frequency to move in a certain direction, right? If you're playing a certain frequency causing a counterclockwise and a certain thing creating a frequency to move this clockwise, then you have two forces acting on each other, which ultimately you could go to the whole yin and yang thing of like, there's always a counter to something.
Well, you need that counter for balance. And what is balance but levitate? Like that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
In a literal mathematical scientific worldview.
Yeah. So the whole thing with the Bob Lazar is like, what if he had that? Because he said it was a core. You put the part on top, it would start like levitating, or there was anti-gravity. So it's like, if you have the counter inside of the regular, so if you have counterclockwise on the outside and you have clockwise on the inside, nothing's going to happen until you fully entrap clockwise with counterclockwise. And then once you do that, then it creates, kind of like I was saying, the vibrations, where it creates some frequency to then lift up. And that frequency, in my opinion, would be the reason why you're not breaking the sound barrier if you're flying. Because frequencies travel all the time. We have 5G. They're not affecting the sound barrier because they're waves, right? So they're just bending in time. So you're not getting these booms and booms and booms because something's moving super fast across the earth, because it doesn't have the same effect as like a solid object moving. So if the whole thing is being moved by frequency, what if there's like some sort of force field around this object of frequency, so that way it doesn't...
And just like we were talking with the UFO that propulsion, which
Yeah.
essentially could be made out of those counter rotations, most likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would create some sort of repellent field around itself. And
Yeah.
so it is 100% possible to light travel if you used frequency, which is a form of light, essentially.
Yeah. And then we talked about speed. Speed doesn't become an issue because we see how fast frequencies can travel.
Mm-hmm.
You make a phone call, it's, a couple seconds, it's pretty fast.
Well, imagine this too. There's if you were in water and like if you shot a gun underwater, that bullet's gonna be slowed by all this weight of whatever. But if you had there's things that can affect the water to where you split the water ahead of you.
Yeah.
And then now you shoot that bullet, there's nothing to resist it. So yeah, it doesn't matter if it's space or just atmospheric pressure or whatever. It's like you could defeat all of that because you're not touching it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you're going to drown if you have water in your lungs, but if it never gets inside your body and you still have oxygen inside, you're good. It's the same rules apply. So yeah, I think it's really a big revelation, honestly. And a lot of things also work on that same principle of counter rotations or yin and yang, or really balance of two things. And I've thought this for a long time, but it's good to see that it makes some real world scientific sense too. But I think a lot of people think, right, like there's good or bad or, things that you should be doing. And a lot of people could agree balance is a good thing that you want to do, but people misunderstand it because it's sort of like the idea of, if you think balance is it, you don't end up doing good or bad. You just become neutral, nothing. But it's doing both at the same time where you really overlay both sets of information. It's like, and I'm not saying bad, but it's like, let's say peaceful and militant, two opposite things, but it's like being peaceful or being militant in a time of peace is having that balance of like knowing peace, being ready for war, best of both worlds, you can help the most. So I think it makes a lot of sense on like a personal level and just the way that life works in general. But the concept of doing both at the same time being different than not doing either, but people get that mixed up a lot.
Yeah, and you hear people talk about yin and yang or like good or bad energy, but what if it's not even that and it's just frequency in the sense of like you have this frequency affecting this, so therefore like the opposites attract or they come together and they end up doing something. Kind of like we were talking about the two cores being put on top of each other. It's like you have this thing and this thing. Like this is weird. Okay, so think of it this way. Just take two magnets.
Yeah.
And try to connect opposite poles. They go together, right? And then the same poles, they don't touch.
Yeah.
So there's some sort of field there that is created.
100%.
Right? And it's like, are those fields just a frequency that just repel each other? And then if you have two frequencies that come together, you unite their frequencies together or whatever. So it's like if you have two frequencies that you can make work with each other, but that also are repelling each other, it just creates like levitation.
Yeah. And there's so much proof of this stuff that it's crazy our technology is not better than it is. Like if you look at, dude, and it sounds like wishy-washy because it's not established science in the way that it should be, but if you ever looked at like a toroidal field, you know what that is? It's it's an energetic field that exists in anything that can output one. So you have one, I have one, the Earth has one, but basically, and the Earth is really easy to look at. We have two poles. Yeah. And so, like, look at the poles of a battery, right? So one's positive, one's negative. One is pulling in, one is pushing out forces. And so the ones that get pushed out wrap around and get pulled in by one of them. It's a feedback loop, but it's two circles coming in like this, essentially, right? You'd have stuff coming out one side, stuff coming in the other side. They're both circulating. That's good enough.
Oh, so I had you saying that made me have an idea.
Okay.
So battery has two, positive, negative. What if there was a third? And that third was like pulling from like the air or like pulling something out of the air, creating the circuit. Because you were saying that we need three things, and if three things are acting on each other, then it can create that
Well, yeah. So if you have these two, it's sort of it's really tough to explain, sort
Oh,
of.
100%.
But you have these two circular motions pulling this force in and then pushing out somewhere. There's almost like an exhaust coming out from somewhere. It's a force coming out,
Yeah.
and not 100% of it is probably able to get pulled back in. So that means there's some bleed off. And so that bleed off, like, what if you had another rotation to rotate that entire thing so you could point that bleed off somewhere?
Yeah.
It's like you could then choose, it's basically adding, like, yeah, you have rotation. It's like there's the flying like a helicopter does,
Yeah.
and then there's floating,
Yeah.
which is when you have this other thing in there and you don't really need to rely on them all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't exactly know how it all works, but yeah, toroidal field is crazy. It's like the poles of our Earth are doing that exact same thing. That's how we get our magnetic field.
Yeah.
It is a toroidal field, and yeah, it seems like that's probably what's going on with everything.
Yeah.
It's all toroidal field, but it's not science. Like I mean, it is. It's the real science. You can look at these things exist, and we can observe them, but like nobody's saying, yeah, this is how things work in general, and we're making our technology like that. Nobody does. So
Yeah.
they almost keep it hidden. Like everybody knows magnets.
Yeah.
you
We know just enough to not know anything.
Yeah. It reminds me of that there's like an Insane Clown Posse song that's ridiculous or something.
Mhm.
I don't really know it, but it's like there's a line where they're like, and magnets, how do they work? It's just like,
Yeah.
no, but really, like, that seems so stupid, but how do they work? It's mind blowing. As a kid, you'd be fascinated, and then somebody just goes, oh yeah, whatever. And that's what growing up is accepting the okay, whatever.
I want to look up real quick and see if electrons or neutrons give off a frequency.
And then I love how quantum mechanics makes all that stuff make less sense.
Oh, 100%. Electrons, when electrons transition between energy levels in an atom, they can emit or absorb photons, light particles, with specific frequencies responding to the energy between the levels. So if electrons can give off frequencies, then ultimately frequency is like a pyramid structure. Like you can keep going up, like you can get smaller to bigger to bigger to bigger to bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if you can affect frequency, you can affect electrons and how things move and how things shift. And if there's electrons in atoms that are in the molecule that are in the air, you're not affecting anything. It's almost like it's not there.
Well, and you're also getting to something, because if you rearrange the electrons, in something, you're going to change what it is. You're going to change the entire structure of those atoms. So it also maybe goes into a little bit of alchemy being a real thing, right? Like changing one thing into something else through who knows what. It also maybe goes into the theory of like, what if the pyramids weren't like built and then assembled? Like, what if they literally just built it there out of scratch? Like, what if it wasn't, whatever it's made out of, sandstone or whatever? It was something else, and they just turned it into that. There's so many possibilities, but
that'd be crazy.
Yeah, it would. Just to give a better example of what the hell I was talking about, here's a bunch of images of a toroidal field. So it's there's a flat Earth thrown in there. Don't mind that. But yeah, you can see it around like a human body. Or here's a sort of a way that it works. You can see. But it really creates a big vortex in the center of this stuff. It's like, I can't even explain how important all this is, and like how much technology works off of these principles and how little it's talked about. It's crazy. Yeah. And so I'm not the guy to talk about it.
So go to that orange one right there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of what we were talking about. If you see how one way is going one way, and then you have one going the other way. If you have a third thing acting on that, then that can create it to almost gyroscope and just start floating up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're affecting the frequencies of those with electrons, you can create, because if this is referring to gravity, right? This is a gravitational field. But if you're able to, hence the anti-gravity, if you're able to harness the frequencies of gravity, is there something out there that can harness the frequencies of gravity, basically turning off gravity? So it's like, that's the idea.
Or turning it up or turning it on in places where it's not.
Correct. Or like
I'm thinking tractor beams or something like that.
Yeah. But yeah, because then you see these things and it's like, if we're talking about, there has to be a clockwise and a counterclockwise of something. If there's gravity, then there must be a way.
This is the perfect explanation for it right here. See, you have one counterclockwise rotation and you have one clockwise rotation, and then those forces create this other third rotation, which in this example is counterclockwise, but it could go either way. It's depending on which way it's flipped. So then there's like this, just like you have that magnet reversibility. There's like, I wonder if you flipped a UFO upside down, if all of a sudden it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know?
Because if you look at that, let's say this is considered clockwise, right? Not their orientations, but just the premise of what we're looking at is considered a clockwise motion. If, like you said, you reverse everything there, then it becomes the counter. So if this is gravity, and what's the opposite of this? It's anti-gravity, right?
Yes.
If you switch the rotation of the magnetic field, it then becomes anti-gravity.
And so what if this entire thing, it's not propulsion.
Yeah.
It's not propulsion. It's just controlling the gravity around
100%.
it. That's all it's doing. It's the gravitational field around it. And then also how you're controlling it is the direction that this center one is spinning. And so you can switch which direction it is, and that's how you would, hover or descend.
Yeah, but it would be opposite of what we think. So if I'm going to go, it's like the inverted if you're playing on a controller.
Right.
If you go to the left, it's going to push you to the right. But if you go to the right, it's going to push you to the left.
Well, okay. And just like we just got a drone recently to help out with another channel we have. Go subscribe to Perfect Zero TV if you haven't. But the drone will hover by itself. If you don't touch the controller, it's not going anywhere. It's going to hover at that levitation. But then if you touch that stick in one direction, giving it one type of signal, like a positive signal, it's going to go up.
Yeah.
And if you just stop touching that stick, like turn the center one off, it still stays there and hovers because those counter rotations are enough to do that.
Yeah.
But then you do it the other direction, send it the other signal, it'll go down.
Yeah.
It's the exact same concept.
Yeah.
And it also explains how like funky these UFOs seem to fly, right?
Yeah. And the reason why we're able to do stuff like helicopters or drones or planes is because we're looking very one-dimensional and we're just focusing on working against gravity. So it's like, and you can work against the gravity, but then if you're able to not even work against gravity, but just achieve the inverse of gravity, the inverse would be floating. So basically, if you turn off anti-gravity, you start dropping. If you turn it on, you start floating. So it's the idea of the balance of figuring out how to turn on and off different rotations. And if you figure out how to turn on and off these things, you're able to levitate and float. So it's like, anyway, going.
Well, it's a lot of torque. It's these different, forces working on each other that result in a completely different outcome. Like it's not going to be more of one or less of the other. Nothing like that. It's a complete new, whether it's like angle of trajectory. It's a really smart way of controlling something.
So then the question becomes, if just like we're talking about UFO, but then how do you put anti-gravity onto another person? Because if we're talking about like the pyramids, right? If somebody wants to levitate those, how do they get frequencies to act upon an item? And that's like the biggest question, right? Is because if you're able, like a UFO, you're creating this energy propulsion device, but how do you get it to act on the thing around it? Hence the UFO flying. Because the whole point is like UFO is a structure that inside is this propulsion device, and it's causing it to float. So therefore, it's like, how do you get this thing to act upon this other thing? So the same thing with the pyramids is like, okay, let's say they figured out how to harness frequency. How do you focus those frequencies on such item and make it move?
I don't know. It's a great question, really, because I think the obvious answer would be some sort of like, you need a focuser. You need to focus this energy in on something. But then it's like, is that even the right strategy? Because if you focus all this energy it's going to be too sharp. It's not like, it's not going to be able to really lift something. It's not going to be big enough to be able to pick something up. So you almost don't need a focuser. You need a lot of emitters. So whatever's emitting the sound frequency, it's everywhere. The sound is thick and heavy. Just like when you go to a concert, you could feel that bass. It's that, but like so much more and really specific
So I think
frequencies.
So like just like a mirror, you can mirror and bend light waves, and light is a frequency. So just like you can hold a mirror at the sun and focus it at something else, or a laser and you can focus it at something else, it's almost like that's what they'd have to do. But is there something we can use to focus sound waves or sound frequencies?
Hold on, let me go to the bathroom real quick and I'll think about it.
Yeah, you're good.
All right, sorry about that.
So the one thing I was thinking about is, okay, you have to generate the frequencies. Okay, there's step one. And then you have to capture and focus them. So for instance, if you want to, like I was looking up and they had, I think maybe it was back in World War I or something, but they had these giant concave things that would receive signals, right? So if you have a bowl and you throw a ball or a catcher's mitt, right? And you throw a ball, you're going to be able to catch it because there's something for it to stop.
Right.
So same thing with sound, right? It's like if you're creating this frequency and you're throwing it at something that can catch it, then you have all that stored frequency, then you can focus it on something. So like just like a mirror, you can focus the light towards something else because you're catching it with the mirror and you're then sending it off because the mirror is like sending and receiving instantly, right? So my thing was with the pyramids is like, okay, you could do it by people yelling, people humming. If you had millions of people or thousands of people, everyone creating a sound at once, or it could be something as simple.
I think about that all the time.
Yeah, or you could you could think of it as something like people rubbing sticks together, creating a sound, like drums, like
a rhythm.
Yeah, some sort of musical thing, creating the sound.
It's all the same.
But the thing I looked up that was interesting is the gravity based on Einstein's, like I think it's the relativity or something like that. He was saying, or it was the thing I looked up from Grok, was saying that gravity doesn't have intrinsic frequencies, or it's not known to us in physics currently.
Right.
But they have discovered that black holes can generate ripples in space, and those ripples can be frequencies. So it's not, I guess, unheard of that you can affect gravity if you can find out how to make gravity have ripples. And if you can make gravity have ripples, then you can find the frequencies and then harness those frequencies to create something to levitate. So it's like, what's that thing that's going to act on gravity?
I think it's the tricky thing is like we can use technology to send something at light speed, but we ourselves can't go to light speed. Same way that we could make something that could levitate, right? Like a UFO. Yeah. But we can't make something levitate. It's a whole different type of technology. A lot of similar principles, but I don't know. But
what do we have?
The gravity is a good workaround because if the frequency affects the gravity, and then the gravity has its own frequency that it uses to shift the matter, that's what's going to push it. It's not this acting force. It's that acting force activates the thing that does push it, sort of, which is gravity in a sense. But it would almost be like if you wanted to push something forward, just simply straight forward in front of you, you would need like a gravitational vacuum in front of you pulling this way,
allowing
like
it to
need
be
to be able
pushed,
to point exactly what direction and everything, because it'd be tough to really pick something up, move it over and set it down. It almost has to be like all snapped together. I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I'm trying to think of something that would be able to, because like what are things that we know can create a hovering effect? So we have magnets, we have sound, we have, what's the thing called, centrifugal force.
We have, like steam pressure or things like that. But do we count that? Because it's too limited.
Because the whole point is like you have like frequency is like the frequency is acting on this thing, two magnets are acting against each other, but steam, you're using like mechanics just to work against gravity. So it's like,
well, it's like you're almost like, it's almost the same concepts though, because you think about it, it's like water is, I mean, is something.
yeah,
Water's something, and then you're taking heat, which is electricity, which is light. It's just frequency, it's vibration, to then apply to this whatever your medium is, and then you're focusing it, and that's the steam pressure.
that's what microwaves
But
do.
it fizzles out quickly because of like, I can't explain exactly why.
Yeah, you can't.
But it's
hold the
limited because you
pressure,
need
yeah.
something to push off of. But
Yeah.
something that can sort of sustain itself independently or doesn't have a range. Because I guess the issue is that the water particles can't reach the surface at a certain point to provide that consistent pressure. But if light is always just pushing off of light, and light can always reach any surface, or sound, I mean, you know, it at least makes more sense because it's waves, and then those waves can't pass each other. They have to keep stacking up behind each other. So it does push.
So the one thing I was thinking about is those pyramid things, those structures. What if those structures were built there before the pyramid, and those structures somehow created the frequency, right? So as soon as you push that stone, because the whole point is like how they get those stones there. You can have slaves push those things, whatever. We can figure that out. But like if you're able to get those things to a certain level, and then once they hit this threshold, they instantly start floating because you've created this frequency, then you can arrange it. You can turn off this section, and then it, you know, makes everything float, and you can arrange it however you want, and then you just turn it off and it all just sits into place.
Okay. Minecraft.
Yeah, literally.
But yeah, like Minecraft with like the water and the water buckets and creating the waterfalls. And like, if you know how to do it right, you can just create these different flowing paths, but just apply that same concept with, you know, just frequencies instead. And yeah, you could do that. It's like these blocks are going to move to a certain point, and then when they get to that point, there's sort of, you know, a transition in the direction of the flow, and it's going to move up at that point. Then it hits that spot. You had something up here that maybe you had to build up to whatever it is.
Because this whole idea makes me think that there is not just either there is or there isn't a material or an element that causes anti-gravity. So it's like, because if that was the case and there was a bunch of it on Earth, it would be causing a bunch of problems.
Anomalies.
I'm guessing they have those at Skinwalker Ranch. But it makes you think that either there's an element that's causing, that can bend gravity. So that either there's an element that's always existed that can bend gravity, and then if you harness it, obviously you put the core in, make it react with frequency, it then allows you to break the space-time and do whatever you want. Because it's, if you're going against gravity and going against frequency, you're not going to create sound, because sound is frequency. So,
dude, there's so much to it, and it's like, it's a shame there's not like real scientists getting funded to work on that type of stuff. Maybe there are, I don't know, but it doesn't seem like we don't get told about any of that.
No.
And the focus for mainstream science is like global warming, basically. So
that's where the money's at.
You know, it is such a shame that we don't have like a real Nikola Tesla of today. Actually, you know, Elon's not doing that stuff.
But there could be many out there, but they're all just working for the highest bidder and just locked in some lab somewhere.
Well, I think to a degree, you almost need free thinkers that are just going to go outside the program to do these sorts of things, because it's too much of a risk for mainstream science to actually latch onto these things. But if you could go out there, prove something, and actually make a discovery, you know, even after you die, maybe they'll come around to accept it. But it just makes me think of that dude, Terrence Howard. And a lot of people are always, you know, discrediting his episode of Joe Rogan, but some of the stuff he had was insane. And it really is based off of a lot of those principles of like, you know, counter rotation with a third axis thrown in there. You know, his linchpin idea, it's basically just a bunch of like triangular sort of drones. Maybe I'll pull that up too, but it's like, that technology is, I don't know, we just need to act on what we have differently. Like doing the same thing, it's like, yeah, we think we know what everything is, but there's always like a new way to act on it, you know? No matter what it is. I just want to pull that up real quick.
I just had an idea that'd be very interesting.
Huh.
So kind of like the was it terrestrial field or whatever. If we just did an experiment with magnets, right? And you just created a magnet that was like forcing against itself, so it wasn't touching, but you did it in a circle,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had like 100 of those in a circle, so it made like a donut, basically.
Yeah.
If you hit it, then it would start spinning crazy because nothing's going to stop it, right? So then you're creating that like hovering effect,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's moving so fast that it's like acting on the ground. But then if you put that other thing inside of it, causing it to lift up and give it that thing that can like get off the ground, I think that's the thing that we're like.
Are you talking about like a donut made out of coils and then like a ball in the center of that is free to rotate
Yes.
to a degree?
Yeah.
That's almost a different model, but it's also equally as interesting. But that's maybe even similar principles applied into a different type of technology.
Because
right?
that'd be the whole point of the anti-gravity is you have the thing in the middle that's not moving, but the thing around it is moving. So then that's always going to cause whatever's in the middle. It's like a gyroscope.
Yeah.
It's like that thing in the middle is not moving, but the thing around it is the thing that's acting on our physics that we have.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. And so if you made one of those big enough, you could potentially do that with pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a cool thing. So these are what Terrence Howard was talking about. And these are actually sort of like his invention, I believe. I don't know why he's not really coming up on here. But this guy right here, he's an actor. You've probably seen him in a bunch of stuff. But it's, it's these, like, we know drones, but yeah, you can see like the geometry of these things. Like it's all comes from these same, here's these, the three axes that, things will torque upon each other. Like these forces, it's all geometric to a degree, but his idea is essentially that you have these things that can hover, and so they can all connect to each other. Like you could have 1 million of these things and they can all connect into a huge like mass.
Like one thing's always affecting something else.
Well, sort of, it's like, these things, it's sort of like a triangular fin shape, and each fin has its own propellers and can rotate in its own way. But then when you apply force from one direction, you're like, just the way that it's all around the same vertex in the middle, it's like you're applying these weird forces to make it be able to do a lot of cool things. But they all snap together at the same time, so you could have a whole bunch of these things. They're all individually capable of levitating. But then if you wanted to move a bunch of stuff, you just snap these things together. They pick up everything, go one way, set it down, do whatever. If you needed something small, you don't need to use as many. But like, I don't know. Just the way he talks about it and explains it, like there is a lot of math that goes into this, and it makes a lot of sense. And like this is just one idea of taking some simple principles of like, just the way that everything is formed, like just how that goes, and like, okay, how could I make a technology out of that? It's the same thing with all these like forces that we're talking about, counter rotations and whatever. Like we know that's a thing. A helicopter already exists. Yeah. Where can we like?
But the idea
push the boundary, I guess.
The hard thing is like this is powered by batteries, so it's like doing this, but you have to find the power source that allows this to do it on its own, that you can turn on and off, just like the Bob Lazar thing where he like put the thing on and took it off, and that was the power source.
I feel like there's a way to do it though. Like if, just for instance, off the top of my head, if one of the propellers stops working for a second and then, gets a second to like charge off of the strength of the other two, because it'll catch itself while it's on that one rotation. It knows when to turn on. It's like,
yeah, you could. That'd be a huge structure though with that amount of power, because you're still relying on electricity instead, because we're talking about using frequency. And unless you can use frequency to you were talking about pulling Wi-Fi out of the air and charge your phone. So it's like if you're able to do something like that, then hypothetically something's always charged. And then that goes into the frequency of the thing hovering, is it's like it's able to move like this because it's always charged.
Yeah. And there may have been some sort of, where's my mouse at? There may have been some sort of explanation about the charging on it too. I'm not sure. Like, you just got to see how they move.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Oh yeah, that's the whole thing. All right.
So it's a pyramid type structure. Oh, okay.
No, this isn't exactly the video. Like, I don't know. They're capable of some cool stuff, and man, I don't know. I saw a good video on it once. But yeah, but there are people out there that are like, just coming up with different things, and he has some other stuff that's really interesting. It's like observations that are sort of taboo to science.
Yeah.
It's like there's nobody working on it, so there's no support for anything. It's up to people to just go do that thing. But like we kind of need that stuff because otherwise the government's just gonna have future technology. We know nothing about it, and like we don't learn anything.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just cool to see.
It's also weird because when we fly the drone, the sound the propellers make is the frequency that can technically lift that thing, because the frequency equals the lift, right? The frequency that it's making is what equals the lift. So it's like if you could make a stationary object hit the frequency that equals the mass of the object, then you'd be able to lift it. So like let's say a drone has a table, has 4 legs. Like the propellers would be the thing on the 4 legs, right? So the sound and the frequency that each of the legs gives off would allow it to go up just like a drone would. So if you're able to put frequency but matching the weight of the item you're trying to lift, then hypothetically it would then levitate based off the frequency.
You made a good point about how it really pretty much is just frequency that even makes a drone fly in the first place.
Because why does it make the whole point of the sound is it's the frequency emitting, but because it's being generated from electricity.
But think about that. That's even on a simpler level. What we're talking about could potentially exist with gravity. Is okay. So we have, just this thing is moving at a certain speed in its direction, and so once it gets to a certain speed, it creates this downward force. But it's because there's waves coming off of that thing, which is the frequency. Like that's but it's interesting because like it's all circular motion that seems to really be doing that. And that's what a lot of our concepts were with the counter rotations and stuff. Yeah. But if you maybe had something where you're just forcing the sound down, wouldn't that give you more lift?
That's
like
what
just
I'm saying.
Pressurized. Like if instead of it being something that's rotating, and maybe it is something that's rotating on a very small level, I guess, in a focuser. I don't really know how that works. You need oscillation.
But the whole point is you have 2 frequencies working against each other, and that causes levitation. But if you have one frequency shooting down at gravity, you can lift up. But that's the whole point is that's just one frequency pointing down. But if you have 2 frequencies working together, then that's just going to levitate the thing and just move it everywhere. Right. So it's like a battery that never dies because it's just frequency. So the whole point is like the whole reason that the drone floats.
Can you get frequency from nowhere? It's like you have to power frequency.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, so they must have found something
0-point technology,
something that gives off frequency of this type and something that gives off frequency of this type, and you put it together and it causes something that lifts. So it's like that's the thing is like, and that's why I was saying the vibrations is if you put something together and this together, and they're both demagnetized in the sense of they repel each other, but they're so heavy that it creates a bunch of vibrations in something that then those frequencies from the vibrations are what's driving it upwards. That's the one thing I could think of.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, it sounds plausible.
I don't know, that's just
there's so much to it, and like we're not experts by any means on anything, but
literally,
it is super interesting, and I think, I don't know, just alien technology or any of that stuff is crazy, but the science makes sense. Like the math makes sense, whether I know the exact science, like the forces that would make these things work make sense. So if people actually were empowered to, utilize some of that stuff, they would make that stuff.
And
hence UFOs.
Yeah. And going back to the JFK stuff, it's like if you knew that the president, like if you knew that your government found the technology to have two frequencies react against each other, creating levitation, and you knew that president was about to go make a deal and share that information with the Soviet Union, or was about to release that information to the public saying, we have this knowledge, would you not want to stop him? Or would you just let it happen? Because you're faced with, okay, the whole world's going to know that we've harnessed this technology.
And for the record, that technology is more valuable, especially at that point in time,
100%.
than anything else on Earth.
Than anyone's life. Like, that's why it's like, okay, you're going to say that, we'll just kill you because your life is not worth this technology that we've discovered. And that could be ultimately wise. Like, that could have been the straw on the camel's back, that like, we have this technology and we don't want to let it go, so it's worth killing you over. And you're not going to tell anybody. You can make up something. You know, there's easy things to make up, but it's like that could have been the thing that's like, we have this technology and we can't release it because it's also the height of this. It's the height of the Cold War.
Yeah.
So it's like if we found the technology in the 40s and 50s and it's becoming the height of the Cold War, it's like, of course you're not going to want to release that we have that technology, because then people, I mean, then you have other countries trying to steal that information.
We were talking about the why at the beginning of the podcast. It's like that's kind of a big answer to what could be a why.
Yeah.
Like if there really was that, you know, that knowledge that they couldn't let get out there of this new technology,
yeah,
then that would be the biggest threat, and they would rather have people like, we're focused on JFK.
Yeah.
Instead of some sort of thing that they were keeping secret, which could be revolutionary if we put time and effort and people were focusing on it and that there was funding and people in the public cared about it. Yeah. But nobody knows any of this stuff that is pretty simple if you just get into it and learn and actually observe stuff for yourself, right? I know a lot of people say that, but it's like, critically think and try to observe something. What's wrong with that? Yeah. You can listen to other people's opinions or, you know, make of it what you want, but, you know, just there almost is no science. We just have fake science, and then nobody does real science. So what is real science?
Yeah, real science is being hidden from you.
Pretty much. And yeah, that's the thing. That real science is anything that's off the record.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, it leads to, we talked about this before, but if you have a way to make transportation free, then the industry of travel goes away. If you're able to make energy free, then the energy sectors go away. And you don't, like, people can make their own vehicles because they know how to harness energy. And then you're losing money, and then therefore people can't have power. And we've talked about how power, money is power.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what ultimately what it comes down to is like, they don't want us to be empowered. The world is working against the common person, because if there was, and I'm not saying this is a call for communism or socialism at all.
No.
At all. But I'm just saying there's a reason why this stuff is hidden, is because they want you tied into a system where you are reliant on stuff they provide. And if they gave you something, if they made your car run off of water instead of gas, you wouldn't need the gas stations anymore. And then you're losing, those companies go under, you know, and it's billions of dollars gets wiped out from the world because you don't need it anymore.
It's like all these companies exist for no reason but to have power and control. Like, that's it. You know, they create products we don't need and then force us to buy them for no reason.
Yeah. And you have one guy who's threatening to come out and say, hey, we have this technology, we're willing to share it so that we can learn and harness it. And they're like, nope.
Yeah. I can only imagine too, just because of like already the intrigue of, like, at the time there were some interesting ideas of, like, you know, like you were hearing about the aliens and it was like, that's an out there thing, but you never heard that before. It's like, where's this coming from? You know, there's some sort of, like, it's the first time you saw outlandish stuff. And it's not just aliens too, like, you know, the Nikola Tesla stuff, or like a lot of stuff was going on, like in the, you know, 40 or 50 years leading up to up to, I don't know, from like, you know, the 1900 to the 60s, pretty much, I guess. Just developments in general of what's possible in technology and the gap of what it could be, like, never had been there before. So,
and this also would disprove aliens, like that technology.
Yeah, it pretty much
would.
Well, kind of.
Well, no, in the sense of like if we found that we can just harness frequencies and that's what's making everything levitate in the UFOs, then it's like, okay, well, then the government was the one who planted the seed of, oh, it's just a being from a different galaxy.
Well,
It's like,
yeah, I definitely think all the UFO stuff that we think is aliens is just the government or, you know, just people with advanced technology. But speaking of aliens, just in general, it's like, what is an alien? Because it's like all living things sort of share some commonalities in some way. And like, you know, depending on what you believe to be true, like you adapt to things, you adapt to your environment, and slowly like you can change into other things. It's like, or if you know, get DNA from somewhere else over the course, like your DNA morphs into being something else. So like, what would an alien be but just you from somewhere else? Like it's probably like it's all the same thing no matter what. So it really just comes down to the technology, how advanced you are. Like if there was real aliens that had that technology, they'd be doing the same thing that these people here are doing with the technology, like the exact same thing. So really, what's the difference? And also, would it even matter if our government was a bunch of aliens or anything? No, it doesn't. The issue is the technology gap that they have on us.
Yeah.
And our willingness to rely on them strengthens that gap for them. It's like that's the big issue.
Yeah, but my thing is like, can you use, because we're talking about something that's acting against gravity, right? But if there's no gravity in space, then how are these things getting here? That's what I don't understand. Because then at that point you're trying to harness gravity from other planets as you're passing them and pulling that gravity to then propel you further or something like that.
You ever see like those old school representations from like maybe like early 2000s of UFOs, and they would maybe have like, it's like a saucer, but there's like two little jets on each side, and they're going through space though with two little it's like they need a propulsion system for in space in the vacuum.
Have to, yeah, because there's a vacuum.
Right.
But it's almost like you can create a giant amount of energy from your gravity on that planet, and then that frequency just shoots you off, and then you can store it somehow, and that's your propulsion until you get to another planet and you do your calculation because you've already sent a drone to figure out what the gravitational field is on that planet, and then you hit that planet and then you generate enough to shoot you off again. Like that's something that I could think of.
Is it maybe just like a super, like, what if it's not free technology or like free energy perfectly? What if you do need to maybe fuel it somehow, whether it's electricity or like gasoline would be ridiculous, but something like that, to where it's not just 100% free energy and it works super efficient, but it just is really efficient with whatever you do put it in. Like just like a combustion engine turns it into something, you know, like it can really use it.
Yeah.
The same concept could apply to where you maybe use like propulsion or, you know, thrust somehow to give it like to start it up, to give it some speed to work with, and then you activate that thing. It already, you know, just it applies all those, you know, just whatever laws affect on it.
Yeah.
And it especially creates that force field too in certain environments or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe the combination of the two, I'm not sure, but I also kind of believe that you could just have pure, if maybe the grid was on that we were talking about last episode, the ley line grid or whatever, you probably could power something for free like that and have it float, but I'm not 100% sure if like what they have right now is actually working on the grid or not.
Yeah. Something else I'm interested in is like the dark side of the moon. What if we just sent satellites that like shot lasers down, and kind of like Roy G. Biv on like your monitor, you just control light shooting it at something, and because it's the moon and it's black, you could like find structures based on lasers pointing back, and then you can map out.
Oh, they could for sure do that.
But it's just interesting that they don't, like, just stuff like that. It's like, why? I mean, unless they have, they're just hiding it.
It's a good point.
But it's like all you have to do is shoot lasers,
it's radar.
Yeah, around the moon, because there's a gravitational field. Like you'll come back around, because that's how the astronauts did it. They went around the dark side of the moon, and it's obviously like on the documentaries too. Like, okay, we're going around the dark side of the moon. We're not going to see any light for a while, right? So it's like if you're shooting lasers, you could still map the floor or the surface of the moon on the dark side of the moon, just because the laser will come back because it's bouncing off of something. So it's like, how come they haven't mapped that? And then at that point, if you're able to focus laser, you're able to focus light. Because then at some point, now you're thinking, if we get all these satellites and we can bounce light from satellite to satellite and then illuminate the backside of the moon. So
Yeah, while you're saying that, I was thinking of like, the astronauts going, they had to circle around the dark side of the moon and come back. That's kind of symbolic in a way too. Like, that's huge if you really think about it. And then I was really thinking about how, like, I mean, it's pretty confirmed that, like, they're Masons, like Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah.
But like, the 33rd degree Mason that, I was talking about, like, that's the highest degree of Mason, and pretty much anything under that doesn't know the full truth for sure of what's going on. But it seems to be like there's a big pivot of, like, where everything gets flipped on its head. Like, and to me, that's almost representative. And so for the record, not only were they Masons, but they were 33rd degree, like, for sure. And so if they, it's like you go around the dark side of the moon and then you come back. It's like getting that knowledge of the other side and returning in disguise in a way. It's like very symbolic of whatever that is.
So they both were 33rd?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. At least Armstrong was, but
I'm going to ask Grok, who were the 33rd Masons?
Well, that's just any member that's reached the 33rd degree.
Let's see.
So that'd be a lot of people.
So people who demonstrate exceptional dedication, service, and contributions to Freemasonry or society. It's not a rank one applies for, rather it's conferred by the Supreme Council of Scottish Rite, typically through unanimous vote, recognizing a Mason's outstanding work.
For the record, you could get in through Scottish Rite or York Rite.
So George Washington was Albert Pike, Harry S. Truman, John Glenn, who's an astronaut, Simon Bolivar. He did stuff. Well, he's a revolutionary leader. Buzz Aldrin, another astronaut.
Yeah, that was the second guy, right?
Yeah. So it says 33 degree is rare. Only about 100 Masons in the U.S. receive it annually. Out of thousands of Scottish Rite members, globally there are roughly 4,000 living 33rd degree Masons out of an estimated 160,000 Scottish Rite members. Not all famous Masons reached this level. For example, Benjamin Franklin was a Master Mason, but there's no evidence he pursued Scottish Rite degrees. Yeah.
It's a whole thing that I'd love to do an episode and maybe get a little deeper
100%.
on that stuff, because there's so much, like, to pull up and show the because it's all symbolism with them, but that's huge. It almost explains, because I was saying, like, the star stuff is very occult and, like, Masonic in general, and so that's I don't know, it makes a lot of sense to me symbolically that they would go across the dark side of the moon, where we're like, hey, what's going on over there? Are there pyramids? Is there some technology?
It's almost like they were given the privilege of, you're
like, they're the only ones
Mason.
that can see. That's the farthest anybody's seen.
And no one else is going to see it, so I'm the only one with the knowledge. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and then to come back, keep the secret, be sworn to it, and if you've seen any sort of, like, Neil Armstrong interview, he's losing it about keeping the secret. Yeah. But I don't know. Just interesting stuff there.
Yeah, definitely.
You want to go ahead and wrap it up there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we started with a lot of the JFK stuff, and we kind of explained our thoughts behind it, and obviously it led us to where we're at now. And I mean, ultimately it could be eye-opening. This is all obviously speculation just based on our thoughts, but what if the JFK assassination was a cover-up based off of energy technology that the United States government didn't want to get released, and he was about to release it? So, I mean, that was a good conversation. I think that would be a very interesting probability. There would have to be a lot of research back to even try to somewhat prove any thought that we had.
100%.
The whole idea is a conspiracy theory, and I don't know, maybe we'll have more information that escalates that theory later on.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to see where it goes. And we usually do a good job about reaching back to topics and brushing up on stuff. So if we do learn new information,
Yeah.
just be sure to stay tuned and catch some future episodes.
Yep. So make sure you guys like this and subscribe so that you can see the future episodes, and make sure to leave us a comment. Don't feel afraid to
Let
comment
us know
on
how you feel.
anything that we say. Just feel free.
All right. See you guys.
Bye, everybody.